It is Wednesday. Thank you for joining us this afternoon here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right across from me is the fabulous, the wonderful super producer, Carlene Bragg.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We are almost there. I'm fine. We're almost
fine.
there. I feel like I didn't answer the question at first. So I was like, hold on, I didn't answer a question. I'm doing well. I'm fine. I'm fine, everyone. We're that much closer to Friday.
So much closer.
On a short work week for a lot of folks, including myself. Including us.
Yeah, including us. We were spoiled.
We were spoiled. I can't remember the last time I've had like a short work week, like Memorial Day work week. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time for me, too.
A long time. So this is not normal for us. Still trying to, feels like Tuesday. Feels real Tuesday.
You know what? We earned it.
We did. We earned it.
I'll say it. We earned it.
We earned it. Look, we got a lot going on. I'm looking at the NBC Live feeds right now. There's a lot going on. Yep. We also have a special guest interview in the 1 o'clock hour. But we want to start the show with the weather because, man, it's one thing when it's hot and I complain about it. It's another thing when it's a little cooler outside.
Are you going to complain about it?
And I'm going to complain about it. I had to bring out the jacket this morning, a little heavier jacket this morning. Rain. I didn't. It's the one without the hood, and I forgot my umbrella. So rain hitting my head. What's the deal, Becca?
Listen, it's just basically almost a repeat of yesterday. But you know what? I do think we will see some peaks of sunshine later on today.
You got some explaining to do.
Some improvements in the forecast are coming. You just gotta be patient.
I'm patient.
Yeah, Nick, be patient.
All right.
That'll be the word of choice for today, for sure.
Let's take a live look at King Street and Boone.
Yes, a live look outside over towards King Street, courtesy of Resort Cams. Wanted to show you this camera. It's now frozen, but it is still cloudy all across the mountains into the metro. So a warm front is actually starting to lift through now as we speak. And as it does so, it's going to try and get rid of all these clouds. So right now, visibility is still at a 10 at most spots. So some of that fog has really started to lift it across much of the area, but it is still cloudy skies all across the metro, something that will change later on today. Now, rainfall totals just from yesterday totaled up to anywhere from about half an inch to even some spots picking over an inch, and that was especially across some of our South Carolina counties over towards portions of Lancaster. Probably picked up the majority of the rainfall, between 1 to about 1.5. Statesville also picking up 1 3/4 of an inch. Here in Charlotte, just a little bit less than an inch of rainfall. We've got more additional rounds of rain to come as we end off the work week, so not officially out of the woods yet, but could pick up anywhere from a quarter to upwards of an additional round or additional inch of rainfall expected. So right now, Doppler radar showing dry conditions all across the area. That last band of showers has officially pushed off Chesterfield County, so that is not something that you will have to worry about going into the next couple of hours, other than a few isolated downpours. Outside now, it is up to 63 in Charlotte, 60 in Hickory, 62 over in Boone. Temperatures will continue to warm up as this warm front eventually lifts across the area. As it does so, it's going to erode that Carolina wedge that had really locked us in with temperatures, cool air, and lots of moisture. So once that warm front actually lifts across this afternoon and evening, that's what's going to give us a little bit of sunshine breakout and potentially drive up a couple of isolated thunderstorms across the area. Then as we look ahead, our next low pressure system and cold front, that's going to bring us additional rounds of rainfall Thursday and Friday, potentially bringing some scattered severe storms to our area. So for today, again, starting off, not the best weather, but the second half of the day overall is going to see some improvements. High temperatures will be back into the middle 70s, and yesterday's high only made it to 61. Today, again, we're going to be much warmer than that, so lots of improvement in the forecast. Let's time out these rain chances for you for today. Most locations stay dry, other than a chance for a couple of hit or miss thunderstorms in the forecast. Not going to be much of a big deal. They'll fizzle out as we lose that daytime heating. By the time we get to Thursday, especially towards those afternoon hours, we'll start to see some scattered showers and thunderstorms, all expected to be non-severe, but definitely could see some gusty winds up to around 30 miles per hour as they come through. Then a bit of a wet, damp start to Friday with another round coming, especially close to around 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock. So this is where we will have the potential to see some strong to severe storms, and you can see them. They look mean. Some darker oranges and reds also indicating some really heavy rainfall. So Friday evening, if you've got any plans, know that we are under a severe weather risk from the Storm Prediction Center, putting us mostly in a low to medium threat. Greatest chance for this is going to be to see damaging wind gusts. This could be upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour at times. Also, the potential to see some small-sized hail and a spin-up tornado not ruled out as well. So rain chances start to slowly go up, especially towards Friday, now at a 60% chance. But once that cold front passes, that's when we're going to get finally the nicer weather. Of course, we'll also be on the warm up as well. We are ending out the last couple of days of May, and the first week of June does look to trend a lot warmer. Temperatures will remain close to average, mainly in the lower to middle 80s. And this weekend, still looking fantastic. May start off a little bit damp for Saturday, but nothing but sun expected both days of the weekend with high temperatures in the lower 80s, and you'll see that reflected on the Guy Roofing 7-day forecast. Just got a couple more days of additional rounds of thunderstorms, especially looking ahead towards Friday. After that, though, we're out of the woods, and as we enter through the first couple of days of June, looks pretty fantastic for that as well. Any complaints, Nick?
What'd you think, Nick?
I love it. We just have to get through Friday. We have to get through Friday. Look, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's all fine.
Look, I'm looking forward to Saturday,
Yep.
where I'm an early riser, so I love the cooler mornings before we get into the summer, where it gets very sticky and uncomfortable in the early morning. So I love that. So I have no complaints. No, it's tens across the board.
Can you believe it?
This is rare. Yeah.
Look, and Becca's going to be back at the 2 o'clock hour, so I might change my mind.
Okay.
I might change my mind.
Might have a couple.
There's no telling what an hour and a half will bring.
Right. I may have I'm going to look at that forecast and say, let me find something to complain about.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Well, we'll check back in then.
Okay. All right, Becca Bursall, thank you for your time. We'll see you back here a little later. All right, that is your forecast. Again, we just have to make it past Friday
Make
and
it past Friday.
Saturday and Sunday.
80 degrees on Saturday.
Monday, Tuesday look good. I'm not trying to jump into the next work week, but it looks good.
It looks good. It's approved.
I will stop complaining one of these days.
Nick Sturdivant approved.
Nick Sturdivant approved. All right, so we want to go to D.C. So,
yes.
Let me set this up for you. Right now, you're watching live. This is President Donald Trump. So he was participating in the swearing-in ceremony for interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., Jeanine Pirro. So right now, he's taking questions from reporters. So take a listen in.
that was just announced in the
Yeah.
golden share. Is that an arrangement you would consider for TikTok as well?
Nothing to do with TikTok, totally different kind of a deal. We'll have to get, to do it properly, we'll probably have to get China's approval. China's never easy. China's never easy.
TikTok?
But I think we'll be able to save TikTok. I'd like to save TikTok. I mean, TikTok was very good to me. I won the young people by 37%. No Republicans ever won, and I won by 37%. And Charlie Kirk will tell you TikTok helped. But Charlie Kirk helped also. Oh, he just happens to be here. Look at him. He loves that we mentioned that name, right, Charlie? He's done great, and I appreciate all the help. But with young people, we won by 37%, Charlie, and you helped. But TikTok was amazing. And he was the first one. He said, get on TikTok. So I have a little bit of a warm spot. I know I shouldn't. They'll say, quid pro quo. Put him in jail for the rest of his life. Quid pro quo. No. TikTok was very good to me. I won young people. I don't know if it was because of TikTok, but it was something happened. No Republican has ever won they call them young people. Young people, you can define it a lot of different ways, but I won every age group in young people. And it never happened, and won by 37%. That's a lot. Yeah.
Back on Iran, did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did. Next question, please.
Doesn't that on sanctions?
I did, yeah.
If Senate Republicans want to push
It's not a warning. I said I don't think it's appropriate.
What exactly did you tell him? Did
I
you
just
caution
said I don't think it's appropriate. We're having very good discussions with him, and I said I don't think it's appropriate right now. Because if we can settle it with a very strong document, very strong, with inspections and no trust. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody. So no trust. I want it very strong where we can go in with inspectors. We can take whatever we want. We can blow up whatever we want, but nobody getting killed. We can blow up a lab, but nobody's going to be in the lab, as opposed to everybody being in the lab and blowing it up, right? Two ways of doing it. Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment. Could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal, and if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
Mr. President, on sanctions, please,
When do you think a deal could happen on Iran? When do you
On
think
which?
a deal with Iran could happen? When do you
Oh, I don't know. I think over the next couple of weeks, if it happens. Yeah.
And on the, when could the administration resume the interviews for foreign students visa? When do you think your administration could resume these interviews
On what?
for the foreign student visa? Yesterday there was
For the French visas?
for the French too, but all the foreign students.
Oh, for the foreign visas? What are you referring? Foreign visas for what? Are you talking about for colleges?
College
Okay, so
students.
you're off of Israel. Now you're talking about colleges, right?
Yes, now.
Okay. Well, we're going to see. Look, Harvard has been a disaster. They've taken $5 billion plus. $5 billion. Nobody knew that they were making this cut. If we didn't do this, we would have never found this out, Pam. They're taking $5 billion. And I'd rather see that money go to trade schools. And by the way, they're totally anti-Semitic at Harvard, as you know, and some other colleges too, in all fairness to them. And it's been exposed, very exposed. And I think they're dealing very badly. Every time they fight, they lose another $250 million. Yesterday we found another $100 million. And they have, they have a fund, an endowment, $52 billion. All right? They get a lot of that from the United States. And I think it's ridiculous. I think everyone's coming up to me saying, we love the idea of trade schools with that kind of money, and money from others, but money from them. You can have the best trade schools anywhere in the world. You give them to Iowa, Indiana, lots of good states, well-run states, and you give them the money. They can only be used for trade schools, and they'll teach people how to build motors and cars and AI. The AI, we're building plants. We're building hundreds of billions of dollars worth of AI plants. Already started, many of them. We've never had a boom like we're having now. You're going to see it. There's never been anything like it. So we're up to about $14 trillion in investments. There's never been anything even close. You look at Biden, this guy, they had people leaving as opposed to investing. And they're doing it because of November 5th, and they're doing it because of the tariffs. The tariffs have been tremendous. I can promise you, and I have great respect for the people at the European Union, they wouldn't be over here today negotiating if I didn't put a 50% tariff on. The sad thing is now when I make a deal with them, it's something much more reasonable. They'll say, oh, he was chicken. That's so unbelievable. I usually have the opposite problem. They say, you're too tough.
Mr. President, there were some Jewish students protesting on campus yesterday. They said they don't want you making these huge cuts, cutting off student visas to Harvard in their name, because they feel
Harvard
like it
has
makes
to show
them
us,
more of a target.
okay, Harvard has to show us their lists. They have foreign students. About 31% of their students are foreign-based, almost 31%. We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? And we're not going to, if somebody is coming from a certain country and they're 100% fine, which I hope most of them are, but many of them won't be, you're going to see some very radical people. They're taking people from areas of the world that are very radicalized, and we don't want them making trouble in our country. So I saw yesterday that in the middle of the UK, there was a nice young man. He wants to go back to school at Harvard, and he looked good to me, but I want to check his past. But we want to be able to see why, these countries aren't helping us. They're not investing in Harvard and all of our, we are. So why would 31%, why would a number so big? I think, number one, I think they should have a cap of maybe around 15%, not 31%. We have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there. But I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country. We don't want to see shopping centers exploding. We don't want to see the kind of riots that you had. And I'll tell you what, many of those students didn't go anywhere. Many of those students were troublemakers caused by the radical left lunatics in this country. All right, one more question.
President,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Will you pardon the people who are accused of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer?
I'm going to look at it. I will take a look at it. It's been brought to my attention. I did watch the trial. It looked to me like somewhat of a railroad job. I'll be honest with you. It looked to me like some people said some stupid things. They were drinking, and I think they said stupid things. But I'll take a look at that. And a lot of people are asking me that question from both sides, actually. A lot of people think they got railroaded. A lot of people think they got railroaded. And probably some people don't. One more. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
How will the confrontation with Harvard end? Do you foresee?
I don't know. I don't know. Harvard's got to behave themselves. Harvard is treating our country with great disrespect, and all they're doing is getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. They've got to behave themselves. I'm looking out for the country and for Harvard. I want Harvard to do well. I want Harvard to be great again, probably, because how could it be great? How could it be great when you have Harvard announced 2 weeks ago that they're going to teach remedial mathematics, remedial, meaning they're going to teach low-grade mathematics, like 2 + 2 is 4. How did these people get into Harvard if they can't do basic mathematics? How did they do it? I mean, people with 1,600 in their boards don't get in, and they're letting people in, and they're bragging about how they're teaching them basic mathematics. Where did these people come from? So we have to look at the list, and Harvard has to understand the last thing I want to do is hurt them. They're hurting themselves. They're fighting. Columbia has been really, they were very, very bad what they've done. They're very anti-Semitic and lots of other things. But they're working with us on finding a solution. And, they're taking off that hot seat. But Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are, and they're getting their ass kicked. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Headed right back out this door. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Keep going. Thank you.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. That right there was President Donald Trump. That shot went to color bars, but that was Donald Trump live there in the White House. He was there for a swearing-in ceremony for the interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., District of Columbia. He also took questions from reporters there. So let's shift now to Massachusetts, where we've been following this story pretty much. It's hard to believe that it's been 6 weeks, but we're talking about the Karen Reed murder trial.
Yes.
This is a live look from the witness stand. Judson Welcher,
Yes.
who could be the prosecution's final witness, is called to the stand. He will continue his testimony today. Welcher, an accident reconstruction expert with the Texas-based firm Aperture, testified yesterday about some interesting techniques that were used to recreate the crime scene. Let's take a listen in to his testimony.
With the numbers we talked about of 15.7 for the M and 458 for the G, to come up with 7,200. Was that anywhere on your slide presentation?
So the slide presentation showed the 458 Gs. The rest of it was not on there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You also indicated that the laceration above Mr. O'Keefe's right eye is consistent with the shape and height of the fin on the top of the Lexus SUV. Do you recall that?
Correct. It's actually properly called a spoiler.
And so you would call it a spoiler instead of a fin?
Correct.
Fair enough. We'll call it a spoiler. You visited the scene at 34 Fairview, correct?
I did.
You stated that you like to visit the scene while you're working as an accident reconstructionist so you can get a better understanding of the data?
I would use the word like, but we want to go to the scene to see the scene.
When you visited 34 Fairview, did you go into the garage at 34 Fairview?
No. I actually didn't set foot on the property.
You didn't set foot on the property?
No, I stayed in the street. It's my understanding there were new owners.
Did you consider the scene limited to the road?
So the access I had was to the road. The laser scanners and the photographs will extend further, but I didn't have access to the interior of the house.
Oh, so you didn't access the entire scene, correct?
In my opinion, I did access the entire scene. I didn't physically step 7 feet onto the grass to the point of rest, but I stood and photographed where that was. I didn't want to trespass.
Where did you understand the body of Mr. O'Keefe was located?
I know it was 7 feet in from the grass. I've seen cruiser cameras showing people around a body. It's slightly north and slightly south and a little bit west of the flagpole.
But you didn't access that part of the scene that you just described, correct?
I absolutely did. I took photographs of it. I didn't trespass and stand at that exact location, but I stood right there. We scanned the whole thing. The scanner uses a laser beam that goes out, 150, 200, 300 feet. So we scanned all that stuff.
Did your scan topography?
Yes.
Then you know that there is a berm raised above street level, correct? If you did the scan.
Correct.
Do you know the height of that berm?
I believe it's 4 inches.
Nowhere in your report, when you're comparing the height of Mr. O'Keefe to the spoiler, do you account for that 4 inches of the berm, do you?
So yes and no. As I indicated, we don't know exactly where the point of impact is, whether he was completely in the road or up on the berm. But for example, where the tire spins on the Lexus, that could be where she's driving up on the curb. And so then that tire will be at the height of the curb. So if he's standing on the higher part and the right rear tire of the Lexus goes up there and spins, then that would be at the same height. We don't know the exact point of impact. So I don't know whether he was on the road or in the street. on the street or on the side of the road.
Exactly, but when you did your depiction on your slide, and you remember you had the ruler and you measured the height, you did all
Absolutely.
that?
Yep,
Where was it? It was you? Was it you in that slide?
it was
Where were your feet?
on the ground.
Not on the berm, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you chose a measurement, which was the ground, to the top toward the spoiler, and you took a measurement. And you said that that approximates the height of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Of the laceration of Mr. O'Keefe.
Exactly, because what you were doing was you were trying to determine and present testimony on whether or not that laceration could be caused by the spoiler, and to do so you had to take measurements, correct?
Correct.
So, you chose to place Mr. O'Keefe in your simulation on the ground. You didn't choose to put him on a berm that would be 4 inches higher, did you?
Nor did I put the Lexus 4 inches higher. I didn't do
Correct.
either one of those.
So the point is, it's certainly possible that if there's 4 to 5 more inches, that would take that eye out of the ability to be hit by the spoiler. Isn't that correct?
No, because if it's 4 to 5 inches higher and he leans his head down or reacts to it, again, we don't know the exact position of his head.
Did you, in your slide yesterday, describe the possibility that his head could be down? As I understand it, you're positioned in that photo just like this. You're not positioned like that in any photo you presented to the jury, were you?
I'm trying to make it clear. We don't know his exact body position at the point of impact, nor do we know the exact position on the ground. So, which is part of the reason why I haven't tried to exactly simulate this, because we don't have enough parameters to do that. So I don't have that information. I'm showing the geometry relative to someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height.
So you don't have the information to do that properly, so therefore you can't conclude that he had a laceration to the eye from the spoiler by your own answer that you just gave, correct?
So it was done properly. We don't have absolute information to say where exactly he was. I'm pointing out that the physical evidence, the height, matches the height of the laceration. That is one data point of many data points.
So you would have to at least concede that the level of his eye could be non-contacting that fin or spoiler, because you don't have information as you just described.
Sure, it could be from contacting the ground.
Pardon me?
It could be from contacting the ground. It could be from other things.
But you don't have the information necessary to conclude with any certainty that Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of impact, had a level of his head in an upright such that it hit that spoiler. You don't have that information, correct?
We don't have that level of certainty. We have that the height and geometry matches.
And you didn't take into consideration the berm, and you didn't mention the berm at all when you were discussing this measurement with the jury yesterday, correct?
That is not correct. You asked me two questions. I absolutely considered the berm. And the second question, when I presented it to the jury, I mentioned the berm when we showed the picture of the shoe in the snow, but that was it.
That's my question. I'll ask it a different way. When we were talking not about finding a shoe in the snow, and you mentioned a berm, I'm talking about when you did the measurement of whether or not the laceration could be caused by the spoiler. You didn't mention accounting for berm height when you discussed that measurement with the jury, did you?
That is correct.
Likewise, you didn't present any Newton's second law analysis regarding the front of Mr. O'Keefe's head with respect to whether his head was contacted by that spoiler, did you?
Correct. Again, it was a glancing hit. We wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh, so it's a glancing hit to the front of the head is your hypothesis?
This whole pedestrian impact is a glancing hit.
So you can have your arm to the side like this, with the back of the vehicle coming like this, and you could glance the right eye with the arm out? Is that what you're saying?
That's what my picture shows when I'm standing next to the car. I could probably find the slide for you.
So you didn't do a force analysis to determine how much force would be applied assuming a contact with the right eye, did you?
That's correct.
And force analysis is what biomechanists do, correct? That's what a biomechanist does?
That is part of
what they do.
So I lined up his anthropometry relative to the known height of the vehicle.
You attempted to line it up. That's one method, but another method is to apply Newton's second law like you did to the back of the head when he fell, correct?
Correct, if we had more information.
Mr. Leslie, why don't we break here?
Thank you, Your Honor.
So jurors, your lunches are here. We'll see you in 15 minutes.
Who's right for the jury?
Goodbye.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. There is the Karen Reed trial. Looks like they have a sidebar right now, so we'll get back to that in just a few moments, as soon as we can. Is that week 6 of that trial, Carlene? All right, so we want to get now to a topic that it's been a big topic. We're talking about the CIAA. Charlotte was denied the CIAA tournament. It's been in Baltimore for the past several years, and we had Miles Harris here. I was about to call him, because I joke with him, I call him another name. I call him Miles Turner after a basketball player. I was about to call him Miles Turner. Miles Harris on the show yesterday to talk about the future of the CIAA tournament, what's next for Charlotte. He actually spoke with an official with the tournament. Here's that interview. Let's take a listen in.
So when you kind of first heard that Charlotte was going to put a bid back into hosting the CIAA tournament, what was kind of like that reaction on your end for you?
You know what, CIAA was a great event for Charlotte, and Charlotte was great for CIAA to make it the huge event that it became ultimately. And I know that we all obviously have always wanted to bring them back to Charlotte. So the reaction was, hey, the tournament is available. It's a great tournament. Let's go out there and give it our best to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. And at the end of the day, I know that they really wanted to come to Charlotte. At the end of the day, what happened, I don't know if you can call it a loss for Charlotte. The good thing is Charlotte has changed, and we have so much going on in Charlotte that ultimately the issue was that they wanted to move here in 2027, and the Spectrum Center was not available. They are going through major renovations. They also have been doing a great job of packing the place up all the time. And also in 2027, we have the ACC Women Basketball Tournament in Charlotte, which is about the same time as the CIAA tournament. And that was ultimately what made them decide to stay in Baltimore for a couple more years.
Right. I think the first grab is that people are wondering, hey, is Charlotte a good enough city to host an event like this? But what you're gathering is that this is more of just like a conflict of scheduling, more so than if whether or not Charlotte's a big enough state.
Charlotte is absolutely the best city in this country for a major successful tournament. We proved that when they were in Charlotte, when we used to get a couple of 100,000 people that came to Charlotte. And that is before Charlotte really grew and became what it is today. We have everything that anybody can ask for being the site for any major successful sporting event. But ultimately, you know, it was a matter of actually, it's a good thing for Charlotte that we did not have any space available to accommodate them.
Right.
And yes, that was the major thing that they wanted to. They didn't want to go through this too many times. Their contract is expiring after 26, and they wanted to go ahead and move. If they were going to move, they wanted to move in 2027, and we simply could not accommodate them.
One of my last questions that I have for you, Mohammed, is moving forward, and I know that you handled the tourism side of things, but I know that you mentioned that Charlotte is an ideal or can be an ideal place for hosting any tournaments like this. If it comes fast forward 2029, Charlotte puts in a bid, do you support that bid moving forward to try to bring this tournament back here to the Queen City?
Absolutely.
All right, that was Miles Harris, his full interview. I want to make sure I get the name right. I didn't have it accessible, so I couldn't give it to you offhand. That was Mohammed Genetien with the Greater Charlotte Hospitality and Tourism, talking about the decision of the CIAA tournament. It's in Baltimore. It's been in Baltimore for a while now. And again, Charlotte, you know, lost that bid for 2027 through 2029. And they got a chance to talk about what's next as far as sports scene and tournament-wise here in Charlotte. Look, Carlene, Charlotte's a great sports town. So, great sports town. You have the Panthers. You have the Hornets. If we can get back on the winning track of things.
We have a lot. We got NASCAR. We had golf last week or the week before. We've got tennis now. We got everything.
And the question I posed to Miles yesterday, and you as well.
Yeah.
What is Charlotte as far as sports? What are we known as?
My opinion.
I'm not going to have you. We'll get back to that question.
We'll get there.
We'll get back to that question.
We'll get there.
Just think about it a little bit longer.
It's a long-winded answer.
Let's shift gears now.
Yes.
Man, this is it's a story that it hits home.
Yeah.
For both you and I, right?
Yes.
You're from Charleston.
I am.
I have family in Somerville. Charleston's like a second home. So when June 17th, 2015, let me set the scene for you. I was a younger reporter in the Myrtle Beach market, and I got the call and about what happened. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. So I called my family, I called my brother who's in Somerville, and I'm like, don't go anywhere. This is what happened. And so let me lay out what happened. So this June 17th, will mark 10 years since the Charleston church shooting, which claimed the lives of 9 people that attended a Bible study at Emmanuel AME Church, also known as Mother Emmanuel. Among those victims, Cynthia Graham Hurd. She was a beloved librarian, community leader there. And I remember just being in shock. I remember going there eventually to downtown Charleston to cover the story, the funeral, those events that followed after. And it didn't just grip the Charleston community, but it gripped the nation.
Yeah.
And I want to bring on our special guest, Charlotte City Councilman Malcolm Graham, grandfather.
For sure.
For sure. He has the grandkids in. As we approach the anniversary, we're less than 3 weeks away from that anniversary, 10 years?
Yeah.
What comes to mind? What are the feelings?
I miss my sister, right? 10 years has gone since we lost her at the Emmanuel AME Church shooting, and each and every day I miss her even more. She was personable, sharp, candid, a community leader in Charleston. She didn't run for public office, but she chaired the Housing Authority Board of Directors, cared about affordable housing gentrification, 31-year employee of the Charleston County Library System.
Wow.
Worked at night for 16 years at the College of Charleston as their night librarian. And role model, big sister, and political advisor, just my rock. My mother died when I was 21, so Cynthia not only served as a big sister, but also as a mother figure. And so 10 years passed, I miss her even more, and we celebrate her life. We don't dwell on how she died. We know how she died. We celebrate who she was and who she loved and things that she cared about. And, the library in Charleston is now named after her, the Cynthia Graham Hurd St. Andrews Regional Library. The College of Charleston highest academic scholarship is named after her, the Cynthia Graham Memorial Fund. And the University of South Carolina, where she received her master's degree in library science, has an anonymous donor donated well over $200,000 for a master's degree for African Americans who wants to be a librarian in her name. And so Cynthia used to joke with me all the time that I was the most famous person in the family because of my political pursuits, ran for Congress, served in the state Senate, did some other stuff, right? But certainly in her death, she's the most famous person in our family, and we're proud of her.
Oh, man. And I should have led with Malcolm Graham, the brother of Cynthia Graham Hurd. Take me back from the beginning. So from Charleston, what does Charleston mean to you? And what was that like growing up with Cynthia in Charleston?
Yeah, born and raised in Charleston on Benson Street between Hughie and Congress.
Okay.
Went to James Simmons Elementary, the whole high school of Charleston. I came to Charlotte on the tennis scholarship, so I played lots of tennis tournaments in the Charleston area at the Jack Adams tennis courts on Congress Street near the Citadel football stadium. Cynthia was my big sister by 5 years. I'm number 6 of a family of 6 children to Henrietta and Melvin Graham.
Oh, wow.
Emmanuel was a part of the fabric of our life, right? My mom went to Emmanuel. My grandmother went to Emmanuel. They both sung in the choir. My siblings and relatives all went to Emmanuel. My big sister Jackie got married there. I found the Lord there, said Easter speeches there. My father and my mother are buried in the graveyard there. Now Cynthia is as well. And so her death was shocking because not only did it happen in Charleston, but it happened in the place that we knew very, very well.
And that church, if you're not familiar, it's on Calhoun. That's Calhoun Street, right?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
110 Calhoun Street, this progressive African-American church, black church, Calhoun Street, John C. Calhoun, who was a racist, who was a member of the Klan, who wanted black folks to be dealt with and serve as cattle, right? And so all over Charleston, you got this history everywhere.
You have so many reminders in downtown Charleston, all over Charleston, quite frankly, of the horrors of slavery and racism.
Yeah, for sure.
But that church is like the fabric of that community.
Yes.
I just passed that church. I was in Charleston last month for the Cooper Ridge Bridge Run.
You ran it?
I ran it.
Okay.
I made
Successfully?
it. I did. I did. But I got a chance to pass that church, and every time I'm in that area, I pass that church, I get chills because I just remember. I just go back to that time. 10 years ago.
It's and I wrote a book.
Yeah.
The Way Forward, and we talk about growing up in Charleston and what the church meant to me and my family, and how Charleston is so historic. I mean, it's hard to find a bad meal in Charleston.
Right.
If you love history, history's everywhere. If you love water's everywhere. It's a great city with the interesting past, right?
Yeah.
My mom would call Charleston nice, nasty, right? Nice on the outside, but then when you start peeling away from it based on its history, some unpleasantries with the community. 10 years ago, Charleston past became its present, right? With the killing of Cynthia and 8 others. We don't talk about that 5 other people survived the shooting that were there in the room. Polly Shepard, Felicia Saunders, the wife of Reverend Pinckney, her 2 kids, Felicia Saunders' grandkid. They were all in the room or in an adjoining room that survived the shooting. And, when you talk about Charleston and the history of racism and slavery, et cetera, that night, its past became its present.
That moment in time, you mentioned Senator Pinckney, Reverend Senator Pinckney.
Senator
Pinckney. Yeah, State Senator Pinckney. I remember covering that funeral, And it's one of those moments that you just is etched in your mind forever because everybody was dressed in all black.
Yeah.
And it was so hot out there. So many people. That service was a beautiful service. It was a long service.
It was a long service.
I think we were waiting for President Obama to get there.
We were.
What do you remember from that day?
It was crazy, right? Reverend Pinckney, I knew because he was the state senator in South Carolina. I was the state senator in North Carolina. Yeah. Obviously, when I would come home, I would go to Emmanuel. I would see him, so I knew him as well. Surreal, him being gone. Thousands of people there honoring him. The President of the United States there.
Leaders in Congress.
Leaders of Congress. Everyone was there. Sung this amazing choir that sung the Old Ship of Zion. Remember that song?
I remember,
the president gave such a eulogy and then sung Amazing Grace. And then Cynthia Graham Hurd found that grace. Funny story, I ran for the U.S. Congress. And Cynthia helped me with all my campaigns. And so she said, I'm going to help you get to Congress because obviously I want you to win. But if you win, I might get a chance to meet Michelle and Barack Obama. Unfortunately, we lost that campaign to Alma Adams. We came in second. So she didn't get the opportunity to meet them in life. But she met them in death because after he sung Amazing Grace, he and Michelle met with me and my family for well over 45 minutes and talked to us about Cynthia and about a wide variety of issues. Obviously, he mentioned her name when he said Cynthia Graham found that grace after he sung Amazing Grace. And so while she didn't get the opportunity to meet him in life, she met him and Michelle in death. I told the president, said, with all due respect, she was more interested in meeting Michelle than you. And he said, well, I get that all the time, right? So you're not offending me. I've heard it before. So it was, and that night was the first night we actually saw Cynthia in death as a family. We went right from the president's meeting with us to Fielding's funeral home where we actually were able to be with Cynthia and comfort her in death and see her for the first. It's just, it was a long day.
Oh man, you've done so much work to honor her legacy with the foundation. What was that period? How long was that period from grieving to going out to I got to do something? And to remember my sister.
It was immediately, right?
So it wasn't a long period?
No, it was immediately. It was immediately. I was at home watching the news. Unwritten rule in my household. I'm a political creature. My wife is not. No CNN, no MSNBC, no Fox News in the bedroom. And I'm there breaking the rules, 9 o'clock at night. Breaking news, CNN, shooting in Emmanuel AME Church, 9 fair dead. And I called Cynthia. Cynthia was my touch point, Charleston. Something like that happening in Charleston at the church. She would kind of know what was going on. So I called her, and obviously she didn't answer. And about 35 minutes went by. The news reports on all the channels got even worse. And then my niece called me and said, hey, we can't find Aunt Cynthia. We think she went to Bible study. And then right then you get this sickness feeling in your stomach that something bad had occurred. About an hour went by, 2 hours went by, no call from Cynthia. Chief Rodney Monroe, who was the police chief here in Charlotte at the time, I called, said, can you give me any information what's going on down there? And he said, let me see what I can do. And he called me back about an hour later, said, hey, from those who survived the shooting, they identified Cynthia as being at the church at the time of the shooting. Didn't say she was dead or alive, whatever, just making sure that I knew that she was there. And then immediately I just knew, you get this sixth sense.
Yeah.
And immediately when I saw her that night for the first time after Obama's speech, it was like, I'm going to be your voice. I'm going to be your advocate. At that point in time, people were saying that they forgave, right, the shooter. And I was like, no, we're not going to. It is too early to talk about forgiveness. We got to create what I call some healthy tension. There were some hard questions that needed to be asked, some more information that we needed to know. Did he act alone? I mean, just all those things that we needed to focus on other than the forgiveness of the killer. Right? And so immediately I wanted to be her voice. I was a different opinion from those who were saying we forgive. I'm like, no, we got some questions to ask. And so I began to be her advocate, about the naming of the library, which happened like 3 days after she was killed, right at the county council meeting. Being her advocate when they were talking about bringing down the Confederate flag, being her advocate at court, being her advocate that although she died with 9 others, she was her own person. She had her own space. She had her own family, right? So making sure that people remembered her. Not the Emmanuel 9, I get it, but remembering Cynthia, right? And I continue to be her advocate for things that matter. And so, yeah, I mean, you just keep, like one of my favorite mottos is that we use about Cynthia and the foundation is keep the faith and do the work, right? Just focus on the work. And so it's the work of, after Charleston, the library renamed, planning her homecoming service, planning the obituary, planning meeting with the President Obama. She's an AKA, working with the AKAs to form their Beyond the Wall ceremony, which is a going away ceremony, working with Nikki Haley and the South Carolina General Assembly about bringing the flag down. There's a picture of me when she signed the bill. I'm standing right behind her when she signed the bill, right? So I kept busy doing the work, being an advocate for not only her, but for a race of people, right? Because Cynthia would have said, although I died that night and 9 others died with me, 8 others died with me, the attack really was against a race of people, not just me and Reverend Pinckney, Sharonda Singleton. It was anyone who happened to be there and who happened to be black. So it didn't matter who they were, what their backgrounds were. The only thing that mattered that night was that they were there and that they were black. Dr. King said that when he gave the eulogy at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church, where 4 little girls were killed in a bombing, he said, pay little attention to the killer and more attention to the system that produced the killer. And so I use all that time is to try to work in my city council work, or my past life as a state senator or congressional candidate, is to try to fix systems so that everyone can feel that they're playing and working from an equal perspective. And as you can tell with this new administration, there's a lot of systems that we need to fix. The political system, where there's an attack on black history, an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, an attack on banning books, which Cynthia's library would be like crazy about. No, we can't do this. Focusing on education about what universities can do and what they can't do and what they can teach. The border, we should have immigration policies. I agree with that, but you can't allow 51 white Afrikaners to come to the country, and then you're kicking out all black and brown folks. And so we got to create an environment where healthy tension can exist, where we can kind of speak truth to power, and really begin to stand up for the rights of people. There's no denying that the demographics of our country is changing, right? And we can't make America great by going back 40 years at a time wasn't so great for folks that look like me and you, right? And absolutely. So we got to do the work.
What would Cynthia say now? What do you think she would say now to the work that you're doing? And you made that pact with yourself 10 years ago that you were going to keep her name alive. You're doing that. You continue to do the work. What would she say?
She would say, keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work. And that's why I kind of wrote the book, The Way Forward, which talks about, okay, we know how she died, right? We're not going to focus on that. But what do we have to do as a nation, as a society, to move forward? What type of examples do we need to demonstrate to encourage everybody, black, white, rich, poor, young, old, that we're all in this together, that we're all going to die, that we all bleed red, and that somehow we got to kind of do the work. And that's why the book was so, 10 years later, for me to kind of put my personal feelings in writing. I'm an author that didn't bring a book to an interview should be penalized, right? I'm grabbing the grandkids, and I grab everything.
You had your hands full.
Their book bags, their raincoats, their 2-year-old's diapers. I got everything I need except the book, right? The book is the way forward. And it honors Cynthia by writing what happened from my perspective day by day. Gives a little history lesson about Charleston, and then it really focuses on, okay, now what do we do? How do we move forward? We got a big town hall meeting in Charleston on June 12th. My good friend Bakari Sellers is going to be down there with me to moderate a panel discussion with some outstanding panelists. The young lady who's the president and CEO of the African American History Museum in Charleston, she'll be with Bakari and I. Talking about the book, and we'll be June 12th in Charleston at Emmanuel AME Church. Tanya Tuppence with the Signs of the Time here in Charlotte will be traveling to Charleston with me on June 12th to help us start that town hall meeting with praise and worship, just honoring Cynthia. Wow. That's the faith, keep the faith, and then the work is working with Bakari and others to say, okay, now what? What are we going to do? And so keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work is what Cynthia would say. And she would probably, Cynthia was a big Jesse Jackson fan. She would say, you know, Jesse said one time that tears and sweat are both salty, but they render different results. Tears will get you sympathy. Sweat will get you change. And so we all need to dry our eyes, right? Keep the faith, and then do the work. And the work is hard work. The work right now in 2025 is speaking truth to power. And you can get penalized for that, as you can see what's happening in current times. But Cynthia would say, keep the faith, Malcolm. Do the work. Proud of you for writing this book. The biggest honor is when I went down to Charleston for a book signing, and the librarian walked me to the section of the library where the book was kept. And I thought that was cool. And Cynthia probably would say, this guy can't even string a sentence together. Now he's writing books. Yeah, so she would want us just to kind of do the work, figure it out. You know, just don't take a knee, fight the power, create healthy tension, and remember that she lived.
You mentioned the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I remember bumping into Reverend Jesse Jackson at the state capitol, South Carolina State Capitol, when the Confederate flag came down. There's so much going on. So as a young reporter, and I'm walking through the thousands of people, and I'm like, oh, wow, Jesse Jackson.
Well, he actually gave the eulogy at Cynthia's funeral.
Yeah. There was so many it was so much that happened during that time.
I have a long relationship with Reverend Jackson. When I ran for state senate in North Carolina, when robocalls was a new thing, he did a robocall for me, endorsing my candidacy. I used to manage a nonprofit organization here in Charlotte, and he came to be my dinner speaker when he was a presidential candidate, and obviously he reached out upon Cynthia's death, and we invited him to share. And he did an amazing job putting in perspective of what happened then, things that he fought for, and what happened 10 years ago at Emmanuel.
Wow. Carlene, do you have a question? Carlene's a Charleston native, too.
I am a Charleston.
She's a Charleston girl. Charleston girl.
It's more of a question. I just say thank you for keeping her voice alive and keeping this story alive. You know, there's so many people that move to the Carolinas every day that probably don't realize the impact of what that day was. And so thank you for continuing to share Cynthia's story.
Well, thank you, Charlestonian. And it's and tears are good.
Tears are good. I mean, it's been a minute, but just like
tears are good.
It takes you right back to it, when, you know.
Sometimes, you know, I remember one time, two stories. One, my daughters, who were college kids at that time when she died, Cynthia just was at our house for Courtney's graduation from Winston-Salem State.
Okay.
That May, and my other daughter was away at summer school at UNCG that summer when she died, and they said, "Daddy, we've never seen you cry." And they, you know, and yeah, so it hurts, right? And it means that you're in touch with your humanity, right? That's black, white, rich, poor. It doesn't matter that you're human, and you kind of understand what happened. And so I kind of get where people said the faith we forgive, right? I kind of get it, but it's so Charleston, right? Charleston is one of those towns. My mom was a domestic worker, my father a truck driver, and that black-white relationship back in, again, I'm 62, right? Back in when I was a high school kid was pretty sharp, right? And so folks would just want to just get along. Let's do what we got to do to get along. Let's not make any waves, right? And so I understood where the forgiveness thing came from. Sometimes you just got to make some waves, right? And ask the tough questions. And so I really appreciate you. I appreciate the tears, because again, one night I was just taking a shower and just started crying, right? You know, just thinking about her.
Yeah, that release.
Yeah.
It's just that release of emotion is kind of like like a volcano.
Yeah.
You let that sort of rumble underneath the surface.
Yeah.
It's going to erupt at some point.
Yeah.
Oh man, and I just want to give we talk about the Charleston area. I just want to give a shout out to Somerville, Monk's Corner, North Charleston,
Goose Creek,
Goose Creek,
Creek, right? West Ashley, Johns Island, James Island, right?
It changes so much.
Wallamala Island for those who go to the country.
Walterboro, all those things.
Walterboro.
It changes so much every time I go back. It changes so much. I don't know if y'all feel like that.
Oh my gosh, every time I go home.
If you go, you know this.
Oh,
if you go to Charleston, when the College of Charleston is in session, and you go on King Street on a Friday or Saturday night, it's like you're on Bourbon Street in New Orleans.
Yep.
It is just, the police have blocked off the street. There's foot traffic from the Battery, literally all the way down to, I guess, not Meeting Street. Where's the old Piggly Wiggly used to be?
Up near, it's up near, Meeting.
Yeah. Go further down Meeting Street by where old C.A. Brown High School used to be over there, right? And that's where folks really didn't go over there. They didn't go over there, right? It was pretty rough, but now it is flowing of people and traffic, and it's a life that I kind of like. But again, it's that, what my mom says, that nice nasty, right? And you start peeling away, and that's why understanding our history is so important in reference to what happened in Charleston, or what happened at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church with the little girls who were bombed by Klansmen, or what happened during slavery, Jim Crow, or segregation. We cannot just erase that history as though it didn't happen. We have to learn from it and embrace it as a country, versus trying to pretend that it didn't exist, or pretend that there's no 4-star generals that are African Americans in the Army, or that somehow diversity is not a strength for our country or our state. So we just gotta use Charleston as a living example of history, not just Black history, but American history, and be able to learn from it.
That is Malcolm Graham, a proud brother, grandfather, father,
And
husband.
they have behaved themselves
The
tremendously.
best guest.
Carter 4, Ashton 2, and a shameless plug. You can get the book The Way Forward from Amazon online, Barnes & Noble online, or you can go to the Park Road bookstore in the Park Road Shopping Center and get the book The Way Forward.
And the town hall is June 12th,
June
right?
12th, 6 o'clock p.m., Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh man, this was awesome. You are always welcome back here on Live Impact News. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great.
Of course. All right. Where we want to go to next, Carlene? We got a couple of things. We want to go to Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
Okay, we have Mitch McConnell speaking at a town hall. Let's take you there live right now. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serdeman.
The personnel business. And the single biggest decision I ever made when I was majority leader, and by the way, I've been both, majority is better, and that's because the majority leader gets to decide what you're going to do. And I decided in 2016 not to fill the Supreme Court vacancy when Justice Scalia passed away. Biggest decision I made in my entire career, but ended up having, I think, a very consequential impact, not only on the court, but on the country.
I think any observer, any historian would agree, certainly, with that statement. As far as some folks agreed with it, some folks did not. But
yeah.
But obviously, it's consequential.
Yeah, I wasn't claiming it was universally universally applauded, but consequential.
As was pointed out, you served as party leader in the U.S. Senate longer than anyone else, 2006 to 2024. You've already reflected upon that one decision, but looking back over the highs and the lows of it all, any reflections at all on how your leadership tenure evolved and what you're most proud of?
I mean, in terms of accomplishment?
Yes.
Well, from a Kentucky point of view, I think probably the tobacco buyout was the most consequential thing I was involved in. To show you how much things changed, there was a tobacco quota, at least a handful of them, in 119 of 120 counties when I went to Washington. 100,000 allotments. I remember a few years before we did the buyout, I came out for it and got royally trashed by the Kentucky Farm Bureau. A couple of years later, they came and said, well, you know, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea. And I was in a position to put the buyout in an unrelated bill, and it happened. And from 2004 to 2014, people got a buyout. Why did it make sense? The government created the asset. You pay taxes on your farm. And so it seemed logical that your asset, if it was going to be destroyed, you get compensated for it. And we did it by putting taxes on tobacco. The final thing I'd say about that is I read a comment by a medical professional at UK who said he thought that it had a positive impact on reducing the number of people using tobacco, and actually had a healthy impact on our state, because we've always been pretty high on these indexes of cancer. And it's sort of like if you work at the Corvette plant, you want to own the car if you can afford it. And people who grew tobacco thought, well, you know, I ought to be using it. So we've gone down now to about a couple of thousand growers who have big farms, and the government's not involved in the business.
Quick aside, and I was a reporter again in radio and TV beginning in the 90s in Louisville. When I heard, when I was first covering you, the tobacco buyout was the biggest thing going on in the 90s then. And I did not realize I was more of an agricultural or rural background, you know, since I was new to town. But obviously you grew up in Louisville. How did a Louisville kid end up being so well-versed and leader in a agricultural issue?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Joe.
You're from Louisville, University of Louisville, and yet you became an agricultural senator in some respects. I mean, so that's, I'm just curious how that, was that hard?
I was smart enough to go to law school at UK.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Early signs of political sagacity. The only thing would have been smarter would have been to go on to WKU.
Before we get to some other modern issues, I have to ask you, what's it like? We talked about your long leadership run. Do you enjoy not being in leadership now?
Well, let's put it this way. There's certain things I don't miss. Senator Givens is here. He's a leader in the state Senate. Mike Wilson is. The thing about being in a leadership role is you kind of take the heat for everybody else. I used to be called the designated spear catcher. And, you know, your job is to try to help everybody succeed. And sometimes, actually a lot of time, that means taking the heat in order to protect your membership. I did that for 18 years, as was indicated, longer than anybody else. And that I don't miss. So what I've done here, and that's going to be the last 2 years of my career in the Senate, is focus on things that, which leads me into making some observations about the situation we're in the world right now. This is an extremely dangerous world right now. We have 4 or 5 serious adversaries: China, Russia, Korea, Iran, and Iran's proxies. It looks an awful lot like the run-up to World War II. In addition to that, one of the big mistakes prior to World War II was something called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Bill. We kicked off tariff wars. And that was widely considered a factor in taking the Depression worldwide. Does some of this sound familiar to you all?
Yes.
Yeah. The slogan during the 30s, America First, sound familiar? I'm skeptical about, on the tariff side, on kicking off tariff wars with your friends. Virtually everybody impacted by the back and forth on tariff are our allies. On the national security side, what we have to hope we will always avoid is a big headline that says Russia wins and America loses. Ukraine is extremely important to us. My dad was a foot soldier in World War II. It's a regular foot soldier. The war ended for him in Pilsen, which is now the Czech Republic, where they met the Russians. And I have letters he wrote to my mother saying, I think we're going to have a problem with the Russians. This is a regular foot soldier predicting what has exactly happened. And the Russians have been a problem, not just up until the Berlin Wall came down, but since then. And they're aligned and communicating with each other. They're not operating all by themselves. It's China, Russia, North Korea, Iran and Iran's proxies communicating. They want to replace us as the international force that we are. That, in my opinion, argues not for isolation. And the final point I'd make is some of you think, well, why are we spending money in Ukraine? Let me give you a little financial advice about money well spent. During World War II, 37% of our GDP was spent on defense. 37%. In Korea, 13%, in Vietnam, 9%. The Reagan buildup, he built up defense, was only 6% of gross domestic product. So you can see it's a lot cheaper to prevent a war than to have one. And a hell of a lot less people get killed. And right now, we need to be showing strength and determination, not weakness. And that's one way in which I'm not exactly aligned. I think the president's trying to figure out which one of these two models he wants to be. I'm pulling for the latter. And on the trade front, that's a loser as well. I read an article in the Herald Leader about 3 weeks ago about a study looking at trade by state. And they ranked the states based on their state's gross domestic product. Kentucky was the most trade dependent of the 50 states based on your state's GDP. We were number 1 in imports and number 3 in exports and number 1 in the country. So I'm hoping this is going to stop soon, because I do not think it will have a healthy outcome for our country. And the final point I'd make is, you've heard discussion about who pays for it. You do. You do. So it's inflationary as well. Other than that, I don't feel strongly about it.
I do want to follow up back to defense for a moment, because you pointed out, as you know, that you were in the final stretch, the last 2 years of your long career. But instead of just taking a back seat, you were the chair of the subcommittee on defense appropriations. You already talked about why this is so strong. Did you take that position or advocate for it because you wanted to have that significant role?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I don't have to take arrows for everybody now. So what I decided to focus on, first of all, was defense and foreign policy. The subcommittee of appropriations actually writes the checks. And we're not doing that as well as we should. The Biden administration never recommended a budget that even kept up with inflation. And regretfully, this one that we ended up sort of passing this year is not great either. So trying to advocate and lobby for, in effect, avoiding the inevitable if we don't. Look, the way you get respect is to have your enemies not want to mess with you. is not complicated. You know, they don't pick a fight with you if they don't think they're going to win it. And that's what Reagan did. Reagan did so many things successfully. He was, by the way, a free trader. Great tax leveler. If you want to look at how government right of center can really work, look at the Reagan administration. Almost everything they did turned out well, which is why he's looked back on with so much reverence, even by those who were not fans of his at the time.
One more follow-up on Ukraine, and that is you actually went to Kyiv. You met with Volodymyr Zelensky. You were there in person, and when after the war, broke out, does that make a difference to you that you, as you see now, the footage of the bombings and things that you can personally see yourself
well,
there?
it's inspirational. These people are fighting for their country, and you're right. I went in 2 months after the Russians did, and with a different intent, of course. And Reagan. If you think about it, we're not in the fight ourselves. We're just helping a democratic country avoid being taken over by authoritarians. Reagan would turn over in his grave if he knew that we were reluctant to send money to help somebody beat the Russians. And that's still true today. The Russians are up to no good. And no amount of acting like we want to be their friend is going to change that. What they respect is strength. And we had an opportunity here to help Ukraine with its independence. Now, here's the good news about helping Ukraine. 38 states, including our own, are benefiting from that because of the equipment that's being manufactured, all coming from our country. So we're helping these people defend themselves, and we're creating American jobs all at the same time. So to me, this is the most important thing going on right now in the world, and I want to play some role in that.
Okay, brace yourself. One big, beautiful bill. Let's talk about the legislation. The House has just passed it by, what, 1 vote? So before I ask you any prognostication, would you mind, because there's no one who knows more about the process of the U.S. Senate than you do.
Yeah.
So, first of all, what hurdles does this have to clear? Can you just explain this as a history teacher first, parliamentarian and things like that? I mean, what happens here?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated to explain, but there's one really important thing you can do that gets around the Senate filibuster. It's called reconciliation, and it's never used except when you have the entire government of your party, which we do right now, and which they've done as well. You would think that was easy, but it's not. Just getting all of your own people in the wagon is quite a challenge, and you saw that in the House last week. What that bill will come over to us, and it does have lots of different things in it. It comes over to us, and we have a thing called the Byrd Rule, and the Byrd Rule means the parliamentarian gets to decide what's eligible and what isn't. What's eligible and what isn't. And so we are crafting a different version in consultation with a parliamentarian to see what we'll say in it. I'll make a couple of predictions. Number one, I think the 2017 tax bill will continue. That means that individual rates will join corporate rates as being permanent. Now, permanent in Washington means until the other guys win. But it is easier to avoid them going away automatically, because then you'd have to, I mean, for example, the parts of the 2017 tax bill that expire will be a huge tax increase. So I think that's likely to come out of all this. Other things will be not quite as significant and will be extremely difficult to get together in the Senate, and it won't be the same as the House. So then we'll have to go to conference and see what happens. Obviously, the Speaker wants the bill to be really close to his, because it wasn't a cakewalk passing it. Sorry for that lengthy explanation, but this will be the single biggest bill of the Trump administration domestically of the whole 4 years. And it was for Biden as well. Right. And they had a different view of how to use it, and used it not once but twice to, in my view, and I think the view of most economists, create quite an inflationary spiral.
Yeah, the $2 trillion American Rescue Plan.
Well, you know, Bill Clinton's Secretary of the Treasurer, Larry Summers, told the Democrats at the time, in March of 21, you do this and you're going to have 40-year inflation. They did it, and we did. So they took a different approach. The Democrats look at this and say, why did you cut all these taxes in the first place? Because we think it created more deficit problems. Well, it paid for itself. The reason we have the kind of deficit we do is that most of what we spend, we don't even vote on. They're called entitlements, and they are extremely popular. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, something David and Jim are concerned about how that plays out in terms of the impact it may have on the state budget. So step back and look at the picture. All of this argument is over 28% of what we spend, because that's all we vote on. Entitlement means you don't have to do anything to reauthorize it. It just goes. And these entitlements are enormously popular, and huge numbers of people depend on them. But that's what's driving the deficit. For example, and the older I get, the better I like this, we're all living longer. And you have fewer people paying in and a greater number of people paying out. I don't exaggerate when I tell you, I signed a letter to somebody congratulating them on their 100th birthday routinely every month around our state. So, and I'm not complaining about living longer. I'm just saying we haven't adjusted these, and the reason we haven't adjusted it is because they're extremely popular. The last adjustment of Social Security was Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Believe it or not, that was even before I got there, which is a long time ago. And what they did was raise the age for Social Security from 65 to 67. It kicks in over several decades. We haven't done anything like that since. Sorry for all the lengthy explanation, but the deficit is primarily driven by things that are enormously popular. And when you see us voting on spending, we're playing around with 28% of what we're spending.
I should mention that from the co-op perspective, since we're here in this area, Congressman Guthrie has been a tremendous asset on the Energy and Commerce Committee on the energy front. But since you just mentioned Medicare and Medicaid, it seems to me that
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Brett is in a very, very good position. The Energy and Commerce Committee in the House is really, really important, and we're fortunate, in particular, me no longer being in the leadership in the Senate, we're really fortunate to have Brett in such a key position. And he'll be wrestling with this Medicaid issue that you guys are understandably apprehensive about.
Before we go, at each table, there's a flyer there about the new book on your career by Mike Tackett, the Associated Press reporter, who, by the way, was not, you didn't hire him to do this. This is his own independent project. So now that the book is out and it's independent, you cooperated. What do you think about the book?
Yeah, well, it's something about it. I'm not selling books here, but I want to tell you how this came about. This guy that I never heard of came into my office 3.5 years ago and said he was going to do a book about my life and career. I thought about that a minute, and here's what I said. I said, you won't have any trouble finding my enemies, but I'd like to give you a chance to meet some of my friends and people who might have liked what I did. And so I decided cooperating was a better approach, but I didn't know what he was out to do. I think in the end, it's balanced. I don't think he liked everything I did, but at this stage, you know, the most I can hope for is that somebody objectively took a look. And it's been out a couple of months, but it's about as fair as you can get. He obviously didn't agree with me on the Supreme Court.
With that, please join me in thanking Leader Mitch McConnell.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We're at the top of the hour. It's 2:01 to be precise. That is Mitch McConnell holding a town hall there in Bowling Green, Kentucky. On the top right, that is an exterior shot of the federal courthouse there in New York City as the Sean Diddy Combs trial continues. Below that, that is Gastonia. That's the ballpark. I think a game is underway right now. Something is happening. It looks like there's a game. Is there a game today?
Let me do some Googling.
It's got to maybe. That's but that is the ball field there, the Caramount Health Ballpark there in Gastonia, the home of the Gastonia Ghost Peppers.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess this is a pretty decent window to play baseball. I guess.
What do you mean decent window? What? What do you
A decent window as far as weather weather window. I thought you were pulling up if they were playing or not. So
I am trying to. I'm trying. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I asked that. Carlene has a million things that she's doing. So, look, it's a cloudy, gloomy day. Hey.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Nick, you know what? We've got some updates. I just went to lunch.
Okay.
The sun was peeking out. And we also have a live camera from Monroe showing the clouds clearing. Sun is coming out. Exactly what I said it was going to do.
Is this
half an hour
Is this on weather too?
It's on the traffic computer.
Oh, it is on the traffic computer.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Some inside baseball for you.
Right. So I have no complaints. I thought about it.
You thought about it.
There's the sun.
No complaint. There's the sun.
There it is.
I see the sun.
The sun is coming out.
Finally.
So, I just said patience. You got to have some patience.
That's what happens when you don't complain. The sun comes out.
Exactly, yes. But you know what? Today's going to turn out to be nice. The first half, wasn't all that great. The second half is going to be a whole lot better. So we will gradually start to see clouds clearing. Some sunshine is expected across the mountains into the metro. So some areas right now probably seeing more clouds, and some areas starting to see a little bit more sun. And this is as the wedge of high pressure system starts to erode. Rainfall totals just from yesterday got a mixed bag, but a lot of locations picked up over an inch, including Gastonia, Shelby, portions of Statesville, Hickory, and also down towards Wadesboro and portions of Lancaster County as well, with Charlotte picking up just a little bit less than an inch. We got a couple more rounds of rain before we end out the work week, so you can see additional round will likely produce anywhere from a quarter to upwards of an inch of rainfall. So Doppler radar right now, it is all quiet. We don't have a single shower to track from the mountains all the way into the Piedmont. Outside right now, temperatures are really starting to respond to that sunshine. We are now up to 68 in Charlotte, 75 over towards Charlotte, 70 in Wadesboro, and up to around 67 over in Statesville, or also 69 over in Boone. So right now, that low pressure system is drifting up to the northeast. That is what's driving up the warm front here this afternoon and evening. But as we look ahead towards the end of the work week, next low pressure system and associated cold front, and that's going to come through and produce rounds of showers and thunderstorms, especially Thursday and Friday. So for today, again, should have ended up being a pretty nice afternoon. Highs will be in the middle 70s across the Charlotte metro, again with some sunshine breaking out and the chance for a couple of downpours in and around the area, but most locations will stay dry. Of course, many of us remember yesterday we had a high temperature of 61 degrees, so we will be 15 degrees warmer than that for today. Futurecast showing a few hit or miss showers and maybe a thunderstorm, maybe a rumble of thunder here or two approaching the evening hours, but most locations will stay dry. By the time we get to Thursday morning, a couple of downpours possible, but it's Thursday afternoon where we have the chance to see more of that scattered shower and thunderstorm activity, although not expecting any severe weather with this. That's going to be a different story though for Friday afternoon and evening, where we have the chance to see some stronger storms. You can see those storms right now on their Futurecast, indicated in some of those darker red colors. Also, heavy rainfall and frequent lightning will definitely accompany these. Storm Prediction Center already has us in a low to medium threat across the region. That medium threat is a level 2 out of 5 on the severe weather risk scale, meaning that we have a chance to see not only just an isolated severe storm, but several in our area, especially from around 1 to 5 o'clock on Friday. That window could shift again as we get closer to the time. But right now, that's looking like when it's going to be the most active. Again, heavy rain, strong to damaging wind gusts, upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour, and some isolated hail, and then a brief tornado not going to be ruled out either, just because of how much rainfall we've gotten just over this past several days. A few down trees and down power lines certainly will be a concern as well, with those gusty winds accompanying them. Rain chances, again, stay pretty high over the next couple of days, but after that, though, as that cold front pushes off, we will be looking forward to a really nice weekend ahead, with temperatures starting to warm back back near average. Our average high for this time of year is 83 degrees. It will stay generally around that area, especially towards this weekend, starting to turn up the heat, especially for that first week of June, a couple of days in the upper 80s. This weekend, though, looks fantastic. It'll be in the lower 80s, so it's going to be feeling fantastic as well with plenty of sunshine. So Guy Roofing 7-day forecast. Again, today a chance for a couple of showers. Most locations stay dry. We'll have another chance for scattered showers and thunderstorms come Thursday and Friday. Friday bringing that severe potential. As that pushes off by Friday evening, we will be looking forward to a drier and much nicer weekend, especially if people didn't get a chance to go out for Memorial Day.
I was about to say, this weekend is like Memorial Day weekend
It's like
redo.
a do-over.
Yeah, do-over. Oh, man. 85 on Monday, 84 on Tuesday. You know, we might have to just cancel the show.
We outside.
We outside.
Great idea. Live Impact outside.
I would love to be live Impact outside.
Outside.
It's a great idea.
Guys, I have an update.
Oh, what happened?
They are playing right
They're
now.
playing.
They're
Okay,
playing
there
right
you go.
now.
There you go.
They're playing right
Okay,
now. They're
look-
playing the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs.
Okay, I
and they're
can-
up 5-3.
Okay, I can root for Gastonia today.
Yeah,
They've been
you
playing.
can- oh yeah.
Well, they've been playing some of my hometown teams, like the High Point Rockers, the Lexington Legends.
Okay,
Lexington.
so putting you in an uncomfortable spot.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So I had to pick hometown over this town.
Multiple towns. You're
A
from
lot of
High Point,
towns.
but you're like, I'm gonna cheer for this one and this one. It's
Piedmont Triad. It's look, we are family. 336. We are a
be a
family.
family with the Gastonia Ghost Peppers. Be their family.
I am a family when they're not
You
playing
got
at home.
loyalty.
Loyalty.
I'm a loyal guy. Becca Bursall, thank you for your time.
Of course.
Oh man, all right. Well, if you're out there that game, I hope you have a good one. I hope you have a good time.
Hope you have a jacket.
I hope you have a
Just a
jacket.
little bit.
Yeah.
Right now it's gonna get warmer, but you know,
Yeah. Man, that'll be
You
fine.
know.
It'll be fine. It looks nice out there.
it does look nice out there.
All right. Let's shift gears now. Let's go back to the Karen Reed trial. So that is happening. We are in week 6 of the trial, day 22 to be exact. So Judson Welcher, who could be the prosecution's final witness, called in the Karen Reed murder trial, continue his testimony today. I believe he's still on the stand.
I haven't seen him, but doesn't mean he's not there.
Right. Welcher is an accident reconstruction expert with the Texas-based firm Aperture. He testified Tuesday about some interesting techniques that were used to recreate the crime scene. He said he gathered police reports, videos, photos, and prepared a 141-page PowerPoint presentation summarizing his findings. Again, Karen Reed is charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating a vehicle under the influence and leaving the scene. She's accused of striking John O'Keefe, her Boston police officer boyfriend, with her SUV back in 2022. Let's take a listen in to what's happening right now during this trial.
Theory going backwards, 20 miles an hour. And the third variable I'd like to give you is to assume an impact window of 10 milliseconds.
Okay.
Can you calculate the G's of force from that data?
You need more information.
Well, let me ask you this. What more information would you need?
So we talked about the glancing impact.
I'm talking about a force calculation of an impact, not as to whether it's glancing or not.
So you want a direct head-on impact in the arm, not a glancing hit to where the Lexus comes in, hits the arm, and they continue off together?
I'd like to start with that, but just so we can hopefully expedite it for the jury.
Okay.
I'm going to want to get to what you have depicted in your diagram of holding the arm out. And that's not a glancing impact. Is that, sir, with the right arm in parallel with the back of the Lexus?
Yes, it is. So really I'm sorry, let me finish, please. What you're concerned about is where the center of mass is. With the center of mass out towards the corner of the car, that becomes a glancing contact. So you don't have a center of mass contact, you have a glancing contact.
Okay, fair enough. So let's start the first force calculation.
I need my calculator.
I'm going to let him use his calculator.
Sure.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready, sir.
Go ahead.
So let's take a scenario where it's a center of impact.
Center of mass.
Center of mass impact, right?
Okay.
Impact to the right eye.
Okay.
Let's start with that one.
Okay. And you want me to use like a 10 millisecond?
Yeah, be conservative. Yeah, let's use a 10 millisecond for
Okay.
the impact window.
Okay. Question?
What do you get for F of force in the F equals M times A calculation?
About 2,188 pounds. I made a triangular crash pulse assumption.
Right, and if you took the milliseconds in half, become less conservative, would you end up doubling the 2188 number?
If you cut it in half, you would double, yes.
Exactly, through a simple mathematical, semi-algebraic application of the numbers, correct? You divide.
Correct. We're doing a little simplification in terms of the crash
Yes.
pulse shape, but generally, yes.
Right. So, but let's take the conservative number, the lower number, 2188, that you came up with. Do you know from the literature, as you did with the head, you went to the literature and said this is how much pounds of force the F you would get to have to cause a break at the occipital bone. Do you know from the literature how much force it would take to break an arm bone?
I have an idea, yes.
What is your idea?
So for a distributed load, such as this, not a concentrated load, you're going to need somewhere between, I've seen, and this is for cadaver tests, a low of like 2,500, maybe a little lower, to a high of 7,000.
Sir, you have switched, haven't you? We're talking about center mass impact. Did you in your calculation just switch to a side swipe impact to do your calculation?
No.
I'm asking about a center of mass impact. How much force would you need? Let's start with the hand. Maybe it's a simpler one. Do you know how much force it takes to break, any of the hand bones, you know what I'm referring to, the phalangeals,
yes,
the metacarpals, and the carpals?
Correct.
How much pounds of force do you need to break any one of those bones?
Actually, I didn't find any distributed loading on the amount of force. I don't know.
Well, no, I understand. But I'm asking, do you know from the literature, not a calculation, doesn't the literature tell you? Can't you go to the literature like you did with the head and you say, okay, to break the occipital bone, the literature says you need a minimum amount of force of this. I'm asking you the same question for the hand. If you don't know, it's okay, but do you know what the literature says for how much force is needed to break a bone in the hand?
So for a distributed load across the hand, there are distributed load tests that show you need over 300 Gs on the arm to do that. So it would depend on the mass of the hand.
What is the range of force that you would need to break a bone in the hand? Do you know from the literature? If you don't, that's okay.
I could probably figure it out.
How long would it take you to figure it out? Do you know from the literature what that number is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Is 300 to 400 pounds of force sound right from the literature that it would take to break a bone in the hand?
For a distributed load,
Yes.
such as the taillight, no.
No, not a distributed load. A load from a motor vehicle going backwards.
Right, that's a distributed load.
Right. So you're saying 300 to 400 pounds of force would not be enough to break any bone in the hand. Is that your answer?
So for a flat distributed load, like hitting the taillight, you're going to need higher.
How about another part of the back of the vehicle?
I guess if you hit on the very corner and it wasn't a distributed impact, like if you had a more concentrated impact,
yes,
that could increase or decrease the amount of force required.
How much would it decrease it from the number you gave?
Depends on what you're hitting, what it's made out of.
The
contact
Lexus
area.
SUV. Let's assume. I'm sorry.
Mr. Les, can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's assume we're talking about this Lexus SUV, right? Well, let me back up. You don't know where exactly, under your theory, that there was a contact. You don't know, you testify to on direct, you don't know exactly where that point of contact is, do you?
Correct.
You don't know.
Except it's on the taillight.
Well, you're saying it's on the taillight, but you didn't observe any impact yourself personally, right?
Did I see Miss Reed's Lexus?
You didn't see the impact, correct?
That is correct.
So, and there is no first-hand witness.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We're following some breaking news into our newsroom. This is a live look outside of Concord Mills. There you see those that traffic backup on I-85. This is on the southbound lane. So this, we believe it's on the southbound lane. Let me correct myself. It's the southbound lane? Okay, yep, southbound lane, headed towards Charlotte. And you see, so we were talking about how just on a normal day, especially on the weekends, this is busy. So let alone with this, it's even crazier.
This is a busy part of town.
So this is near Bruton Smith Boulevard. This is that main stretch that takes you, if you get off on that exit, it takes you straight to, if you make a right going southbound lanes, it takes you straight to Concord Mills.
Right.
Yeah.
One way takes you to Concord Mills, the other way takes you to the Speedway.
Speedway, yeah.
So it's just a busy
A lot of restaurants, shops,
Everything's up
hotels in that
Yep.
area, everything there. So that is a live look. That is, so 3 right lanes are closed past exit 49. That's Bruton Smith Boulevard. So 3 out of the 6 lanes are closed. Very impacted as far as traffic, high impact area. And so we're getting reports of a vehicle fire, which is closing these lanes. So you see those flashing lights that's coming from a fire truck there. They are blocked off 3 lanes there, half the lanes there. So traffic is moving, but it's moving slowly. So if you're in that area, if you're coming back to the Charlotte area, or you're in Concord and you're headed toward Charlotte, or just bear with the traffic for a second, or if you got time, just hold off on going out if you're headed towards Charlotte area. Avoid it, yeah, just avoid it. So yeah, again, this is a live look at I-85 near Bruton Smith Boulevard. This is in Concord, exit mile marker 49, exit 49 to be exact. This is in the southbound lane. Again, we're getting reports of a vehicle fire there. This is a live shot there. 3 out of the 6 lanes are closed. Traffic is backed up. Traffic is moving, but as I mentioned, it is moving very slowly. So we will keep an eye on this. To see how this progresses. Again, emergency crews there on the scene. If you're headed out, you're in this area, just take your time or just
avoid it if you can.
Avoid it if you can.
Yeah.
Avoid it if you can. That's some good advice there, Carlene. All right, and we're going to keep this. We want to keep this in the bottom right of the screen. So we're going to take you back now to the Karen retrial. It's day 22 of the trial. We'll take you back there, but we want to keep this shot at the bottom corner so we can keep our eye on it, and so you can keep your eye on this this backup there.
Correctly?
You did?
Okay, that's the numbers you gave that would break a bone, correct?
So the 300 actually didn't break any bones, I believe. The 750, the one example, didn't break a bone, but as you got above 350, you started to break bones.
So
300.
you got above 350.
300.
Above 300, yeah, because that's what I thought you said the first time. You got above 300, you start to get breaking bones, correct?
Correct.
And so if you take that 300 number and compare it to the 2,188 pounds of force, you have 7 times the amount of force necessary to break the bone, correct, in the force analysis?
No. If you take 300 Gs times a 12-pound arm, you get 3,600 pounds. The calculation you asked me to run earlier gave you 2,188 pounds.
Right.
So you are 1,412 pounds above the force required. Like the tolerance is 1,412 pounds above the force you would say get in a 20-mile-an-hour impact in terms of the fracture forces.
Let's do it this way.
I'm sorry?
Let's do it this way.
Okay.
The force that you calculated from my hypothetical of this Lexus SUV going backwards, you came up with the F number of 2,188, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't. What was the? You said
2,180.
You said dyslexic, or do you say Lexus? I didn't understand what you said.
The Lexus
My apologies.
SUV that you've been talking about.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I didn't hear it.
You came up with a number for F for force of 2,188. Are you changing that number?
Nope.
Okay, so let's go with your number of force from this vehicle of 2,188. I'm just simply asking, how much force does it take to break a bone in the right arm of a human being? How much force, not acceleration, how much force does it take to break a bone in the right arm?
Sure. So somewhere between 2,500, the one cadaver tested the distributed load of someone of similar size and weight, and actually close in age to Mr. O'Keefe, showed about 7,000 pounds of force to break it.
Let's go to the hand. Do you disagree that the literature shows it only takes 300 to 400 pounds of force to break a bone in the hand? Do you disagree with that?
Your question's too general. I can't answer your question. It depends on the loading. If I take my pencil, which has a very fine point, and jam it through my hand, I can jam it right through my hand because it's a very small point. But if I distribute the load and a broader load, such as hitting a taillight, it takes much more force because the load's distributed across it. It's like if I sit on the corner of my bed. I might sink in this far when I sit on the corner of my bed, but what happens when I spread my load out, when I lay on my bed like this? I don't sink in as far. Has my weight changed? And weight is basically force. No, but I've distributed it over a larger area, so for a given force, you get less sinking into the mattress. So if you hit a broad surface like a taillight or a wall like this, it takes much more force than if I were to take a singular small round object and jam it into the hand. That hurts. This does not.
Okay, if you can hear my question, if it's unclear, you tell me. For not a pen, not your bed, but for a Lexus SUV of 6,000 pounds, is there any part of the back of the Lexus in any manner where you can get a break to the hand from 300 to 400 pounds of force?
Any part on the back of the Lexus?
Yes.
Probably.
Okay. So probably, your words, you can get a break to the hand from just between 300 to 400 pounds of force. That's what you just said, correct?
So you're taking the totality of the back of it? Like if you got it stuck in the bumper? Potentially, yeah. But from a taillight or a broad flat surface? No.
I'm not asking about a taillight. Any part of the back of an SUV, you agree that it is probable that you can get a break of the hand bones from just 300 to 400 pounds of force?
Your question is incomplete, right? You said any part of the back, but then you wanted me to not include taillights or not include the rear body panel. If you hit a very narrow part of the car, like say the edge of the tailpipe, that creates much more of a narrow contact. So force divided by area is pressure. So if you have a very tiny area, you have very high contact pressures. And so, but if you distribute the load over a larger area, the number on the bottom of that fraction is much bigger, so your contact pressure drops. So hitting the edge of the exhaust pipe is going to have a much higher likelihood of causing a fracture than hitting flat against the tail light.
Okay, what we're going to do to make this more efficient, excuse me, sorry. Mr. Wilk, can you pull up a slide from Mr. Wilk's, or Dr. Welcher's presentation for the back of the Lexus, please? The back hatch, and Your Honor, may we publish that?
Sure. Do you know what number, though, Mr. Lessons?
Mr. Wilk does, and I know you need it, so he'll tell me before I publish, and then we'll give you the number.
Your Honor, may I look here?
Yes, I'm going to let Dr. Welcher look at his slide.
Oh, sure.
Here
Yeah.
instead of just up there.
The back hatch, yes. Do you have one of just the rear gate? The one measuring the height, maybe? There we go. Thank you. Okay, this is your slide presentation. Is there any part of the back of the Lexus SUV that has that more concentrated area where if the hand hit it, 300 to 400 pounds of force could break it? Is there any part, for example, the edge of the license plates, above the license plates, the L symbol that sticks out that would be concentrated? Anything you see there, could 300 to 400 pounds of force contacting at any of those points cause a fracture of any of the bones of the hand?
So, I don't know how to show this because in the middle photograph, right where the 2 is on the license plate,
yes,
there's a vertical edge. That area is recessed in. So if you hit right on that vertical edge, that could potentially do it.
That could do it. How about the L of for the Lexus symbol if the hand is there?
No, it's not deep enough. The compliance of the hand is just going to sink into the car.
Is there any other part other than the license plate that the force applied, you would only need 300 to 400 pounds of force to break the hand?
Maybe the exhaust pipe, and potentially if you hand your hand up near the spoiler.
Right, so now let's go from 300 to 400. Let's go to the 2188, which is your number. Use 2188. Is there any place where in 2188 force you could have a fracture of the hand on that back gate.
Just to be clear, 2188 is the number I calculated for you. It's not, quote, my number.
I understand, but we did. I understand, but we did the calculation. Is there anywhere on the back of the vehicle where 2188 could cause a fracture of the hand?
So that was a forearm fracture tolerance I thought we were talking about, because we used the weight of the whole arm for that.
We did. And my question is there anywhere in the back of the vehicle, in your opinion, that could cause a fracture with that?
I'm sorry, what, to the hand? Just the hand or the whole arm?
I'll take any part of the right arm. You call it the hand, the forearm. Is there any part that could cause a fracture?
So probably similarly, if you got your forearm down near that transition, I don't know if you can see the little dot. I'm talking about this area.
Yes, yes.
Right here.
Yep.
So that transition between the two body panels.
Yes.
That could potentially do it. That's back where the reverse lights are. I'd have to look at whether, that would take it before breaking the plastic. And then, again, maybe if you hit the exhaust pipe as well. It's a much more narrow loading condition.
How about the corner of the tail lamp?
The corner of the tail lamp. I suppose if you had just your hand on the very, very corner, potentially.
Potentially. But you didn't do any of that force analysis for this case, did you?
For the hand, no.
But you did it for the head, correct?
Correct. Because that I'm able to quantify.
Mr. Alessi, that was slide 108. I just want to
I'm
keep
sorry, Your Honor. Yes, Mr. Wolk. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. You are aware, Dr. Welcher, that Mr. O'Keefe suffered no fractures of any kind in his hand, correct?
So there were no fractures noted in the autopsy report, but they didn't actually x-ray, from the records I've seen, either his hand or his arm. So there was, at least according to the autopsy report, no overt fractures, but the x-rays I saw, none of them were the arm, and the autopsy report said no sternum, spine, I think it said torso. They didn't say that there were no fractures there.
Was there any evidence in the medical records that you reviewed of any indication whatsoever of a fracture in Mr. O'Keefe's hand?
No.
Was there any indication whatsoever in any of the medical records you reviewed that there was a fracture of any bone in the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe?
Not that I saw. Again, it wasn't x-rayed.
Was there any indication in the medical records and the autopsy that you say you reviewed of any fracture of any bone anywhere in the body of Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
Other than the occipital bone or the skull?
There's a couple bones in the skull that were fractured, but other than the skull, no.
Correct. So, are you aware that the medical examiner for the state of Massachusetts, Dr. Shorty Bello, performed an autopsy on Mr. O'Keefe? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And you're aware of it because you read the autopsy report, correct?
Correct.
Are you implying, and it's a question, that Dr. Shorty Bello missed a fracture or didn't look properly for a fracture on Mr. O'Keefe?
No. I'm simply indicating that, for example, a hairline fracture, I didn't see any evidence that they actually x-rayed the structure, so there would be no overt evidence of that.
There were wounds on the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
And you are saying that the medical examiner should have x-rayed that to determine whether there was a hairline fracture? Is that your testimony?
No, you're asking me about evidence and proof of absence of fracture. So I would look for an x-ray to see if that was the case. I haven't seen any evidence of an x-ray of the arms.
So it's your position that on every autopsy, there should be an x-ray of every bone in the body, and that the clinical judgment of the medical examiner should not be accepted, and there should be an x-ray of every bone before a conclusion can be drawn that there's no fracture to a bone in the body of the deceased. Is that your testimony?
Absolutely not. Like, I'm an engineer. You're asking me about proof. And so proof is somebody looked at it, somebody took an x-ray, somebody palpated it and found a comminuted fracture. So we're talking about proof.
Sir, I didn't use proof in my question.
You asked me about the opinion of a medical examiner. I'm not a medical.
Only one person at a time. Mr. Leslie, let him finish, and then you can ask the question.
Your Honor, I hadn't finished my question.
Okay, then finish your question. Dr. Welcher, wait for the question. Then let Dr. Welcher respond. It's a nightmare for Madam
I
Court
understand,
reporter.
and I think I've been doing that, but I'll redouble my efforts. Dr. Welcher, I didn't use proof in my question. I'm going to repeat the question. Is there any indication in any medical record, autopsy report of the deceased of any fracture of any bone in the body?
That was not your original question, but to answer your question, no. Except for the skull.
Except for the skull.
Correct.
Do you understand whether the absence of any fractures other than the skull of Mr. O'Keefe was of significance to the medical examiner, Dr. Scorty Bello, in the conclusion she reached in the autopsy report that you read?
System.
Did you read the conclusions of Dr. Scorty Bello in the autopsy?
I believe so.
Are you aware of whether Dr. Scorty Bello has analyzed whether the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe are inconsistent or consistent with a motor vehicle impact? Are you aware of any analysis to that effect?
Objection. So I'm going to see you on this one.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. It looks like the Karen Reed trial has gone into a brief recess. Let's get back to a little bit of breaking news. So that vehicle fire that we reported on earlier here on I-85, right near Concord Mills, it looks like it's cleared up. The lanes are back open. It appears the lanes are back open, as you can see right here. At the time, 3 lanes were closed down. Traffic was snarled. Now looks like everything is back up, running normally. So that is a bit of good news and a good update for folks who are in this area, headed in this direction. So that is that. So we want to take you now to a story that we covered earlier, moments before we actually got on the stream. So the North Carolina Council of Churches held a press conference today at Memorial United Methodist Church, that's on Central Avenue in Charlotte. And they were addressing a recent incident that involved ICE agents on the grounds of a church on May 20th. And according to the North Carolina Council of Churches, there was concern among people in that community, neighbors, and they held a press conference again this morning. In case you missed it, let's take you there to that press conference and get their remarks from that recent incident earlier this month.
Good morning. My name is Amelia Maria Stinson-Wesley. I'm the senior pastor here at Memorial United Methodist Church. Welcome. Welcome to our sanctuary. As a pastor and a faith leader, I want churches and synagogues and all houses of faith to be places where people can worship and pray without fear. And today we will hear from 3 speakers: the Reverend Dr. Jennifer Copeland, who is the Executive Director of the North Carolina Council of Churches. The council represents over a dozen different denominations and houses of faith, and I sit on the governing board of the council. We will also hear from Daniela Andrade, and she is from the Carolina Migrant Network, and Jose Hernandez Perez of the Latin American Coalition. They are leaders here in East Charlotte. Dr. Copeland?
Thank you. Good morning. I do greet you on behalf of the North Carolina Council of Churches, which is actually 19 denominations in this state, in big cities like Charlotte and small crossroads all across North Carolina that most of us have probably never heard of. At the North Carolina Council of Churches, we don't pretend to be objective. We don't pretend to represent a variety of opinions. We reflect the issues of the day through the prophetic voice of the Old Testament and the gospel proclamation of the New Testament. And as one personally baptized and confirmed into the Christian faith, my allegiance is first and foremost to that place. And from that place, the notion of immigration is firmly framed as a call to hospitality. Hospitality. So when the forces of the world conspire to harm the ones we are called to show hospitality to, then Christians are expected to protect them. As you all know, or you probably wouldn't be in this sanctuary today, on Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, armed immigration and customs enforcement agents staged an operation on the property of a church in Charlotte during preschool pickup and drop-off. A church whose denomination happens to be a member of the North Carolina Council of Churches. And while no one was detained and the agents eventually departed without incident, their presence on sacred ground disrupted the peace. It created fear among the staff and the children, the families, the congregants. And here's the thing, it wasn't just in that place that fear was instilled, but sacred places all across North Carolina now worry. Can that happen to us? Will they do that here on our space? The chilling effect is, well, downright chilling. We can feel it in our bones. ICE enforcement activity on sacred property interferes with the Christian call to welcome the stranger, serve our neighbors, and carry out the ministries that are central to our faith. If ICE needs a staging ground, and I would argue they don't, then they need to do it somewhere else. The places where people come to worship, pray, study, and live out the tenets of their faith should be unavailable for this kind of posturing. Furthermore, these places are recognized by people everywhere as sacred spaces. Spaces where the hurting find healing, the hungry are fed, and families, regardless of their immigration status, because friends, you can put this in the record, we don't card at the door. So regardless of their immigration status, they can come here seeking peace. The North Carolina Council of Churches and all of our 19 denominational members remain steadfast in our call to protect the integrity of these spaces, the dignity of every single person who walks through those doors. The pledge only seems extraordinary because our culture has created a narrative of scarcity and danger in a world actually filled with abundance and with grace. And the fake news that only white people who immigrated here from Western Europe, or lately I hear also from South Africa, that only those people can be trusted, conveniently leaves out the truth that those early European immigrants perpetrated genocide against those who welcomed them and enslaved people from another continent to compound their wealth. The Council and our members are working intentionally to foster hospitality for immigrants and, when necessary, protection for those who have been wrongly called dangerous by those who are actually dangerous because of their disregard for human rights, constitutional rights, and due process. And we do this, friends, because these people are our neighbors. They live on the streets we live on. They work in the businesses we work in. They play in the parks where we play. We know them. They are not statistics. They are not dangerous. They are not strangers. But here's the thing. Even if they were strangers, even if they were, people of faith hailing from traditions well beyond those represented by the North Carolina Council of Churches have clear guidelines about behavior towards strangers who come to our neighborhoods in search of a new life. Here's one that might sound familiar to some of you from the book of Leviticus. When an immigrant resides with you in your land, you shall not oppress the immigrant. The immigrant who resides with you shall be to you, wait for it, as the citizen among you. You shall love the immigrant as yourself, for you were immigrants in the land of Egypt. Some of us know that old story. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were immigrants in the country where they first settled. They prospered in that place. They contributed to the society. But eventually their descendants were forced to immigrate yet again to Egypt because of a famine. You know, people leave their homes not because they're bored, but they leave because they're dying there. There's no food there. There's violence there. Well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob left because of a famine. And you've probably heard of Moses, who eventually led those descendants out of Egypt because things got bad there. They immigrated to a new place, and eventually they became the people in charge of that place. Sort of like people here in this place, people who look like me, in charge. And once we are in charge, God reminds us, welcome the strangers. Show hospitality to the immigrants, because you know what it feels like. Because you know the difference between welcomed and unwelcomed. Welcoming the stranger remains part of the Christian code of conduct to this very day. There's another famous person who was born in that faith tradition, and his parents fled their home because someone was trying to kill their baby. From Matthew, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up and take the child Jesus and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night and went to Egypt, and he remained there until the death of Herod. Jesus was an asylum seeker. A child whose family crossed the border without proper documentation also makes him a dreamer. Obviously, his family received hospitality because, well, we're standing here talking about him. We know who he is. He didn't drown in a flimsy boat or die of dehydration in the desert. His life and teachings, his death and resurrection, bear witness to God's promises to humanity. Now, friends, just imagine if Abraham, Moses, or Jesus had been treated the way we are treating those seeking safety and well-being among us, well, where would we be today? Our immigrant neighbors work among us. They participate in our economy. They hope for a better future for their descendants, just as Abraham hoped for, just as Jesus' parents hoped for, and frankly, just as my own ancestors hoped for when they came from Ireland in 1756. May we all be so kind to our neighbors as those who also welcomed Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniela Andrade, and I'm the communications spokesperson and communications lead for Carolina Migrant Network. We're a nonprofit organization based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're the only nonprofit in the Carolinas to provide free legal representation for people in removal proceedings and in immigration detention facilities. Our organizing department, Comunidad Colectiva, offers on-the-ground resources, educational tools, and real-time alerts to inform community members in case of ICE enforcement. Our hotline allows communities to safely report suspicious ICE activities and solicit support in the event of a loved one being detained by immigration agents. This month has been challenging and heartbreaking for many of us. From May 12th through May 17, 2025, Charlotte, Monroe, Kannapolis, and Concord have experienced heightened immigration enforcement as part of a regional operation targeting Charlotte and Atlanta. We have received, at Carolina Migrant Network and Comunidad Colectiva, we have received a total of 133 calls asking for help, averaging a call of one call per 45 minutes, day and night. That's a 4,000 increase from the normal volume of calls. This number does not include the various direct messages, social media messages, text messages, and other messages that have been sent through our hotline. Every North Carolinian should be alarmed that our neighbors are getting abducted by ICE in an operation that appears to be both indiscriminatory and discriminatory. We know that ICE will continue their anti-immigrant smear campaigns, calling anyone they handcuff as a criminal and assuming that the public and the media won't ask questions. We also know that we have spoken to family members of people that were kidnapped by ICE who have citizen children, workers who seem to be simply targeted because they were driving the wrong kind of van, or parents who were near school. But even in the face of this cruelty, we will not back down. It is up to our community and our elected officials to refuse to accept ICE's claims as face value, to question their tactics and the dangers of this kinds of stunts to our community, and to show up for our neighbors whose lives have been reshaped by the threat of reality of family separation. As Carolina Migrant Network, we will continue to organize, defend, fight for the safety and dignity of every member of our community, because more than now than ever, we need to step up. Thank you.
Hello, I am Jose Hernandez Paris. I'm the Executive Director of the Latin American Coalition here in Charlotte. We help our community with many programs to empower them and to assist them and continue to be important and contributive part of this country. When we were thinking about today, something came up in my mind, which was the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. Because I came to this country when I was 13 years old, and I love this country. And to think of what's happening right now, I never thought that what's happening is happening. It's the unthinkable. And one of the first things I learned as a migrant child was the U.S. Constitution. And one of the things that I learned is that the preamble starts with "we the people." Not they the people, not us the people, but we the people. And as I think about that, I think of the fact that we are attacking American children. Just recently with what happened with the preschool, which is very personal because my own granddaughter went to the preschool. And so I know the families and I know the staff that works there. And to put myself in the position, if anybody to put themselves in the position of a child in a pre-K, looking at patrol cars, people with bulletproof vests, people with badges, with guns, when you're just trying to go to school at that age and trying to understand the world at that moment and see the parents being questioned. And it's an example of what's happening, not only at the preschool, or what happened at the preschool, but what's happening in many of our neighborhoods. The campaigns of terror of vans being parked outside neighborhoods, which are targeting migrant communities. The fact that they want to make sure that we know that no one's safe anywhere, at any space. At the coalition, every day we're dealing with that as we're providing services to our community, thinking if they're willing to go to a house of faith, to a place that previously was considered a sanctuary, imagine places where are even more vulnerable when we know our community is present. But we have made a decision, and it's not to back down, it's not to walk away, it's to be there for our community, to be there present. And we rely on our allies, we rely on the rest of the community to support and to voice their concerns and to voice their support for us. Many of us are limited on what we can say because unfortunately nowadays the unthinkable is happening, which is that we are afraid to speak up. And if we speak up, something that you say can turn you into a target. And I never thought that I would see that in this country that I've grown to love and to be part of me, And on the other side, just to finalize, I put myself in the shoes of those agents who, how do you prepare for something like this, right? We're going to go to this previously protected space for children, and we're going to take 11 cars and all these people. How do you prepare to go to a place where there are children? And the only answer I can come up to that is the dehumanizing of people to a point where they're no longer people. And you use terminologies like criminals in order to criminalize communities, as it has happened in the past, so that you are able to function in this way and criminalize someone like a child. And then, as an immigrant myself, when I look at the comments online and see people actually defending this, makes me aware that this has not only affected those in enforcement, but has permeated the community. And so it's so important that those of us who value humanity, who value Christian values and other values of faith, for open arms in the history of migrants, as it has been highlighted today, that we speak up and that we're all supporting each other. I really want to thank the North Carolina Council of Churches, and particularly the Methodist Church, for taking a stand and for speaking up. Also, I know we have some elected officials here today, and I'm so grateful to see an elected official finally speaking up and saying what we need to say, but some of us are afraid to say because of becoming a target, whether you've been here in these 47 years and you became a U.S. citizen 37 years ago, and now it threatens your own survival when you have children that were born here as well. But I just want to thank everyone for being here and for allowing us to speak, and thank you so much.
So as this press conference concludes, I would like to encourage you to eat lunch here along Central Avenue. I go to Three Amigos regularly. They have some of the best mole sauce in Charlotte. I walk to Manalo's Bakery at least once a week or more. I eat at El Pogrecito because I love their pupusas, and I love all of the wonderful women who work there. I would ask that you all join me in committing to spending money each week in an immigrant corridor, purchasing things made by immigrant hands. We will not have a question and answer here at the pulpit, but the speakers will be available in the area below the altar.
All right, so once again, you heard there from a church speaking on some ICE activity that was happening nearby in our area. We wanted to turn now here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus to a major topic for the city of Charlotte, and that is the continual updates that we get with the CMPD police chief separation agreement, as we've now come to understand it just of this week. By the way, I'm Vanessa Rufus, taking over here for the next hour. We wanted to bring in our Nate Morabito, who's been doing a little bit of digging on this situation. So just a quick recap, of course, for folks who might just be now diving into the situation. We've learned this week, Nate, right, that there was, we thought it was a settlement, but it turns out a separation agreement to the tune of $305,000. But you're finding out this could be worth a lot more in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, the word settlement is used, though, so let's be clear on that. The title of the document is separation agreement, but I looked through here earlier, I saw the word settlement. So,
Okay.
Number one, call it what you want to call it. It's at least $305,000 worth of money that is taxpayer funded, that's going to the chief. Of course, this is tied to the war that former council member Tark Bakari kind of started between him and the chief over outer carrier vests. And it kind of boiled over. A lot of it was behind the scenes through text messages, but there was a real public press to get the chief to change his mind about these outer carrier vests after the Galway Drive shooting, which left 4 officers dead, and eventually he came around to it. Well, we know that City Council, or at least the majority of City Council, approved this settlement. We received a question from a viewer after this all finally came to light. The chief, in an effort to be transparent, released this settlement, this separation agreement, call it whatever you want, Sunday night to us. And the viewer said, well, what no one's really talking about is how this is going to affect his pension, his retirement. He's going to retire January 1, 2026. That was part of the agreement. He will get a severance, which does not impact his pension. But there is some money in the fine print here in the $305,000 that will ultimately increase his retirement benefits. So when you look at this separation agreement, it's worth more than $305,000, because every year when he retires now, he's going to be getting thousands of dollars more. And it's really complicated to get the math right on this. And I've tried multiple times today. Let me start by telling you the state treasurer is really who administers the state pension plan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is partially taxpayer funded, through the employers, but employees pay into it too. And the state says, look, because of state law, we can't release any information about what he may receive until after he retires and starts collecting. But there's a formula you can use, and there's also a calculator, an estimator you can use to figure out, well, how much is the chief potentially going to make here. I should point out that, number one, he received a retroactive $14,000 raise for all of 2025. That's really important to note. And he also received a $45,000 retention bonus, which says it's pension eligible. This is important, and let me kind of explain why. And if I'm losing you, Vanessa, let me know, because you're looking like, uh-oh, we're going deep in the weeds here.
Well, no, I want to go in the weeds, so
okay.
Please, let's get into it.
Ready. Sharpen your pencils here. So the way that the state comes up with someone's pension, if you're a state or a local employee, is they take the highest paid 4 years in a row, the average of that payment. That's the starting number, okay? And I've scribbled out, and you don't need to see them in detail, but this is what it would have been if this separation agreement didn't happen, and what it ended up being, okay?
Mm-hmm.
How his pay changed. His pay increased to essentially $340,000 this year because he got that retroactive increase and the retention bonus. Now, I'm really irritated with the city of Charlotte. I requested 3 weeks ago his personnel file. I'm not the only person who's done it. The Charlotte Observer posted all of these public records requests they made. They put an article out today that the city has not provided to them yet. Personnel file is important for a lot of reasons, but especially so that I can accurately know how much the chief made every year. Thankfully, there is some salary data out there that I was able to use to come up with our estimates today to try to figure this out. Because again, I need to figure out the 4 highest paid years in a row for him, which are the last 4 years, okay? So you do that, there's a formula, you have to multiply it by this number and then by the years of service, which for him, it looks like it's 33 years and 7 months. May 1992 is when he joined the police force, according to the city's website. So I do this formula, and it looks to me like his pension, his retirement benefits, because of the separation agreement, have increased at least by $9,000 a year for as long as he's alive. So let's say that's 20 more years. That's $180,000 plus extra that he's receiving now that his pay was boosted this year. And again, this is the city of Charlotte that approved this settlement. This is the attorney with several members of city council who said this is the best thing to do in this moment based on concerns laid out in the separation agreement from the chief, saying that he felt like his rights were violated. And he was saying, I'm going to retire. If you all pay me this money, we don't need to go to court over anything. And they've kind of finally released this to the public. But it's just like, just when you think it's over, you keep learning more and more. And the biggest thing for me about this is public money that's involved. And so we really should know how our government's spending our money. And that way the public can make their own mind up here. Whether this was a good decision or a bad decision, the public, that's up to them to decide ultimately. And their representatives who approved this. Not everyone did, but enough did. And so I think that that's a really important point here, that when the city council approved this, knowingly or unknowingly, they essentially inflated his retirement benefits in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a great job, by the way, explaining the reasons why this is getting inflated. I have a few more questions. I guess one of my questions would center around the role of the state auditor at this point, because, to your point, there were questions from the state auditor about, whether it was 1 penny or more, to paraphrase the letter that was sent to Mayor Vi Lyles. People deserve to know how that money is spent. And we heard at the beginning of this week the state auditor releasing a brand new statement saying that they will continue to work with city officials as this investigation, I think they characterized it as wraps up or ramps down, something to that effect. But it feels like maybe there could be more in this case that they should be looking into. What do you think?
I don't know. That's maybe subjective. When I read the statement, I thought, okay, they're pumping the brakes a little bit here.
Yeah.
But they still have the oversight, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know that they finally pressured them to get to this point of releasing this. I certainly believe if they think that anything was done inappropriately or wasteful, the state auditor will continue its full court press on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it did feel like there was a little bit of grace given, based on my interpretation, that, okay, the city's starting to come around a little bit. But you also have the treasurer's office, too, that's going to dictate the retirement. And the prior chief, Chief Kerr Putney, had issues with his retirement agreement and his pay when he went to retire. So we don't really know what's going to happen there, if anything. And what is it, end of May? I mean, there's still a lot of time before this actually goes into place. I mean, several weeks ago, Vanessa, I also requested every payment, over a certain period of time the city gave the chief. The city of Charlotte has not given that to us. These are public records, And I think that that's the real challenge here. A lot of times when you get attorneys involved, they have a obligation to protect their client, which is the city, but which is ultimately the taxpayer. And you have taxpayer money, and the auditor has the authority to compel the city to turn this over if it really gets to that point. So we'll see whatever else may trickle down. I got the impression that maybe they're feeling like, okay, things have settled down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But every week since this all happened, I mean, it's just been one surprise after another at the city council. So I don't want to predict anything at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's been certainly, I guess, a wild ride, to say the least, following the storyline. If I could go back to the records request, because you obviously have expressed frustration on that point. I feel like in some of these situations where, journalists or even the public, because the public can records request things as well, usually there's a deadline or a timeline by which, the agency has to get back to you. Is there a timeline that you've understood that they should?
There is no timeline in North Carolina.
Okay.
That's the core issue in North Carolina.
Yeah.
I worked in Tennessee for a long time.
Yeah.
In Tennessee, a very specific number of days.
Yeah.
South Carolina, a very specific number of days. In North Carolina, a reasonable amount of time. And that's up for interpretation. And I'll tell you right now, we requested the Audrey Kell principal's personnel file.
Mm-hmm.
This was Friday afternoon. Our assignment desk, we were talking about, we had heard that she hadn't been there right? The big story in town. And so the assignment desk, we talked, and they requested the personnel file. It came within one business day to us. And that's why yesterday we were able to report she was suspended. It's been 3 weeks since the chief's personnel file was requested. That hasn't been provided. That's very simple. There are certain parts in there that they can release to us. Has he ever faced disciplinary action? We won't know that until they give us the records for it. I don't assume he has. How much has his pay changed over the years? I know what's in the salary database, but is there anything else we're missing? So there really isn't a specific time frame, and that is something that has been argued for a long time. And the city of Charlotte has said in recent years, we're going to be better about this, because a lot of attorneys and the public file records requests. There's tons of them. It's not just the media. I mean, a lot of my friends do it a lot, and we wait a long time often, but sometimes the city does move a little bit quicker, and it just depends where they get hung up. This is clearly a situation where they're stuck with the city attorney, and I think for weeks they've been trying to figure out how they're going to handle the situation. And instead of handing over all the text messages and emails and closed minutes, what happens is the chief releases his settlement, credit for him for doing that. And now we have to wait for these records. I mean, there's been some records I've waited for like 3 years from the city of Charlotte for, and by then, who cares? You know, that people have moved on, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that's why they do that, but if the city council, the city wants to come off like they're being transparent, there is a process to move things along so that the public can trust them, ultimately.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've raised a few questions that you're trying to get answers to. Are there any other, I know it's tough to say because you alluded to the fact that the situation develops, it seems, daily, but are there any other loose ends that you feel like this story warrants wrapping up? Obviously, keeping in mind that the chief is still going to be here for the next few months, too.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. You know, I go back to that press conference the city of Charlotte held earlier this month, where several members of council went up there and kind of shared their thoughts about the chief and how there's not corruption in the city, and kind of had to fight back some claims from another council member. And I'm thinking to myself, at some point, it might be worth it for all of these people to get in one place and publicly discuss this as much as they can, and say maybe there's some lessons that need to be learned. I believe Mayor Vilisle said as much at a city council meeting a couple weeks ago. We've got some things that we can do to improve moving forward. That is what we, the public, expect. You know, most of what happens in government, we take for granted, right? It's just happening behind closed doors by bureaucrats, people that are just going to do work every day. And then you have these decisions that leaders make, and they have to be accountable. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've been here now, 7 years. I grew up in Charlotte. I think that our leaders in this community in general are way too comfortable. They're comfortable in that they are rarely questioned. And I'm not just saying by me, by other members of the media, by the public. For whatever reason, I don't understand it here. And it takes something like this for everyone to kind of latch onto it. But accountability goes a long way. And I think I said this the other day when Tijuana Brown was facing her situation, a city council member who got indicted, who claimed she's not guilty for PPP fraud and wire fraud. Anytime I've called her, she's answered the call and answered the questions. And I think that says something about what we expect from as the public. You know, you're not going to do it all the time, but when things are going kind of off the rails, it is helpful to just answer the questions. And maybe you are not allowed to answer the questions. I think the city tried to do that at that press conference, but so much of this hadn't even really come out yet that it feels like another cycle would be helpful to really show the public that they mean well and they're working in their best interest. I'm not saying they're not. I just know the public, I think, would welcome hearing more from them, because there is a real frustration about how this all played out from the people that I've heard from.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like we should mention too, in some of the cases where we do see the community maybe rally around a specific cause and be very dogged and determined in speaking with city officials, whether that's showing up to public comment, sections during council meetings or whatnot. I feel like that sends a message, and in some cases it reaps the outcome that that group in the community wanted to see. So I feel like folks shouldn't take for granted the power that they have too in this situation to call for accountability. That's what they want.
Your voice matters, and I think that Julie's reporting yesterday was really a great example about the airport workers that went there in a peaceful way. That's all we're suggesting. Peacefully sharing your opinion so that there's a person-to-person conversation. So there is not a keyboard and a computer screen. You know, there's not even a phone call, I guess is better, but just some kind of communication with your elected leaders when things are good and when things are there that you disagree with. That's how we become constructive and improve. And I think that for whatever reason, and I get it, I think I'm in it too. I mean, life is very busy and you kind of have to pick things that affect you. And I just think that sometimes, you know, you see issues become big and then most of the time they don't for whatever reason. And then we'll move on to whatever the next big story is. If anything good has come out of this, it's that this has led to this conversation now for weeks. And there's been a lot of great reporting on it too. I mean, a lot of my colleagues and competitors have done really great work to help shine the light on this. And we're getting closer to whatever the truth is. But because of the law, I don't know that we'll ever get the truth either.
I think too, and you know, because you pointed this out, I feel like I wanted to, you know, talk a bit more about this. The fact that this body of reporting in general, multiple outlets, you know, I feel like I heard that from, you know, Michael Graff, who we had here on Live Impact News Monday. He's the reporter who broke the settlement story, but he called out us as, you know, for example, one of the outlets where, you know, he felt like as a group, as journalists, he felt like we were getting at whatever the truth might be together and kind of collectively moving towards this singular goal.
I mean, it's so critical too, and that's what I love that we've done. I mean, Julie can focus on the day-to-day of what's happening with this. My role is to kind of behind the scenes figure out what's really going on, and that's not going to always go viral, but this is the truth that we're seeking ultimately. And so that takes time and it takes resources, and there are some really great journalists in this community that have done a great job. Some are institutional, they've been here a very long time, they have great contacts, and I think it really takes all of us. I mean, if there's no winning and losing here, it's like if we're all getting closer and scratching the surface beyond there to figure out what the truth is deeper down, I think we're all winning in the end. The community is winning, and I've seen that throughout this process.
Yeah, yeah. And before we wrap it up, the only other thing that I feel like I just want to reiterate, you said this too, whatever the truth is not for us to decide, and we're not making a call on that, you know, as journalists. But to your point, it's about finding out what the truth is. And it's up for the public to decide whether they think that this was a good thing or not, because they could very well find out all the details and be like, yeah, all right. Or they might see it and go, but that's not us to just, you know, that's not our call.
I think we've not tried to suggest that in any way. All we're trying to say is that whoever's listening right now, whoever's voting, whoever lives in these districts, whether it was good or bad in your opinion, you should be reaching out to your council members for every major issue that has the potential to impact you. It's so important, and again, I think it's just critical that they hear from people to know that, you know, it's not some void out here. There are real people that are working hard every day. That's what the Taxpayer Protection Alliance basically says. I mean, these are hard-earned tax dollars that people are paying to their city, to their county, to their school board, and they want justification that what they're spending, they're going to get a return on that. And you don't know that without the information. And so that's what we're trying to do, you know, a little bit at a time, but at least we're getting something. And again, I give the chief credit. He released this information, and at least we now have seen the separation agreement.
Yeah.
That's a step towards really getting a better understanding of what this is all about. Now we know it's worth a little bit more than what the agreement says because of the pension implications. But who knows what tomorrow or Friday brings? I mean, or next week. It's just, I don't think this story in particular is going away, particularly because there's so many public records requests still out there that a lot of us are waiting on.
Well, we appreciate you keeping us posted and also taking the time here, on Live Impact News. Can you remind folks what time your reporting is coming up tonight?
Yep, my main story will be on tonight at 6 o'clock. I'll be there in studio with you guys, and then I'll be on briefly at 5 o'clock, and hopefully we'll get a web story out before then too. We're finishing touches on that right now as well.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Nate. And of course, folks here streaming us on WCNC Plus. You just keep it here throughout the evening as Live Impact News comes to a conclusion at 4 o'clock. We turn it over to the evening newscast. And as you heard from Nate, you'll start to see him probably around 5 o'clock. So thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
All right.
See you soon.
We'll see you soon. All right, folks here who are hanging around for Live Impact News, thank you so much for sticking with us. We want to turn to a national story because we actually saw Vice President J.D. Vance talking about Bitcoin, or really it's stablecoin legislation, but it was happening at this Bitcoin conference, and really touting, he wants to talk about the Trump administration's efforts to get this legislation passed. This is the Genius Act. It's a bill that would regulate the digital asset, and it did clear a key procedural vote in the Senate last week. There were some Democrats who signed on to that, but unknown how it's going to fare in the House. So with that, let's turn you over to some of these remarks from that Bitcoin conference.
I've been to a lot of Bitcoin conferences, but this is definitely the biggest crowd I've ever seen. Holy cow. So, what's cool about this conference is that it's all about making history. So, we're making history because this is the biggest Bitcoin conference we've ever done. We're expecting 35,000 people to be here today. We're making history because this is the first Bitcoin conference to ever happen over $100,000 Bitcoin prices. A year ago in Nashville, we made history when we had candidate Donald J. Trump come and address this crowd. He made us some promises. He promised to end the war on crypto. He promised to free Ross Ulbricht. He promised to never sell our Bitcoin. He promised a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And he promised to make America the Bitcoin superpower of the world. In 100 days, promises made, promises kept. And today we're going to make a little bit of history this morning by having the first ever sitting Vice President of the United States of America address the global Bitcoin community. Are you ready? With that, join me in welcoming the Vice President of the United States of America, J.D. Vance.
Thank you all. Well, first of all, I want to thank, please, thank you guys. Take your seats. And, the Secret Service is a little bit nervous because I told them these Bitcoin guys really like guns. But they really like the President and Vice President of the United States, too, so I think we're doing okay. So I first have to thank David Bailey, grateful for everything that you've done for the Bitcoin community. Thanks in particular for what you did for me and the President, helping us get from candidacy to the White House, because we've done, I think, a lot of good in the past 120 days, and I don't think we could have done it without David's support. I want to also thank the Winklevoss brothers, Tyler and Cameron. These guys are out here somewhere. Who, I got to say, Tyler and Cameron, I think really helped break the dam in Silicon Valley, because if you remember, you go back to June or July of last year, it feels like forever ago, it's not even a year ago, where Silicon Valley, people would whisper in private that they were going to support Donald Trump for president. They would talk about the fact the Democrats had gone too crazy. We had to get Gary Gensler the hell out of there, but they weren't quite willing to say, at least not publicly, that they were going to take the big step and support Donald J. Trump. And Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, I think they were some of the first big names in Silicon Valley to take that step, and a whole host of people followed them. So Cameron and Tyler, thank you for that. And of course, I want to thank the good people at Coinbase, the organizers of this event, and everybody who made this incredible event possible. It's great to be here with Bitcoin at 108,000, at least when I checked this morning, and as Vice President of the United States. It's great to be here. Now, you guys know I get to meet a lot of exciting people in my job, but it's been quite a while since I've been to a conference with this level of energy. I mean, hell, you guys came out here at 9 a.m. after a long night, I'm sure, in Las Vegas. You can't do that without a lot of good energy. But I promise I'm not just saying that to juice my own meme coins. But I think it's wrong, actually, to call this just a conference. This isn't a conference of people. This is a movement, and I'm proud to stand with you here today. And I think this conference, this movement of people, is where the future of cryptocurrency in this great country gets decided. So let's start by making one thing abundantly clear. That future is going to be decided by the people, by you, not by unelected bureaucrats. Now, as you all probably know, you've got a star-studded lineup here today, including several of my colleagues in the Trump administration. David, Bo, Hester, I know you're all out there. It's great to be among so many friends and allies. So, I want to speak for just a few minutes about a few things, and I want to talk a little bit about what we've done in the Trump administration. I want to give you a rundown of what this administration is doing on digital assets policy. But I also want to talk about some of the principles that help guide us as we develop this policy. But before that, I want to speak about why I'm personally optimistic about crypto and what it means for the American people. Now, people ask me why I tend to be bullish on the future of innovation in this country. Now, I spent enough time in Silicon Valley to recognize the difference between good tech, technology that boosts our productivity, makes our lives richer, that grounds us in the real world and complements our day-to-day lives. That's the good technology, but there's also some bad technology out there. And when it comes to crypto, I think the last several years have made it clear that we're talking about genuine, ground-up innovation, one that's already improving the well-being of tens of millions of our fellow citizens. I believe it's 50 million Americans own Bitcoin, and I believe that's going to be 100 million before too long. But it's not just about Bitcoin and about the value that's been generated, the wealth that's been generated by so many millions of our fellow citizens. Through decentralized finance, crypto has transformed how Americans transact with one another. It's expanded access to banking for many who may not otherwise have had it. And every single day, I feel like I see some groundbreaking new use of blockchain tech, whether it's in supply chain management, whether it's in hospitals, or whether it's in changing how we track and store patients' private health records. But for each of these new forward-looking applications, I also feel like there's an incredibly conservative element to crypto technology, and that's as a hedge. Crypto is a hedge against bad policymaking from Washington, no matter what party is in control. It's a hedge against skyrocketing inflation, which has eroded the real savings rate of Americans over the last 4 years. And as you all know well, it's a hedge against a private sector that's increasingly willing to discriminate against consumers on the basis of their basic beliefs, including their politics. That includes, of course, debanking users for Second Amendment advocacy or for ties to the first Trump administration. In Canada, the government did the same to kill those big truck driver protests in 2022. Less than a week later, they succeeded. The protests were over. But maybe most importantly, I see crypto as a hedge against one of the most dangerous trends in the digital era in both the public and private sectors. And that's of elites who, rather than innovate themselves, prefer to simply take over and co-opt cutting-edge technologies to assert their control over other people. And I know we believe this in this room. That's not Bitcoin. It'll never be Bitcoin, and you guys are going to make sure that happens. But as you know, there's a new sheriff in town because after 4 years of mistreatment and outright hostility led by Democrat regulators, lawmakers in this country have a choice. Will we lead our nation into a future of financial sovereignty, of innovation, and of prosperity, or will we let unelected bureaucrats and foreign competitors write the rules for us? And I'm here today to say loud and clear, with President Trump, crypto finally has a champion and an ally in the White House. In our administration, we understand the full potential of the digital assets industry, not just as an investment, not just as a flashy technology, but as a symbol and driver of personal liberty for all our citizens. And we are dedicated to seeing that promise fulfilled. The way that we see it, the people in this room are the digital pioneers of the American economy. And that's why our administration is doing something a little unusual in Washington. We're listening to all of you as you blaze the trail of innovation. The innovators in this room are making people's lives better. You're pushing boundaries and solving problems, injecting unprecedented transparency into how we do commerce. And the way we see it, you all deserve a similar level of transparency and clarity. And most of all, you deserve respect and support from your government, not bureaucrats trying to tear you down. Now that means a few substantive concrete steps, and of course the first and most important of those steps is straightforward. We've got to clean up the wreckage that the last administration left us, and since day one that is exactly what we've been trying to do. Our administration, we prioritize eliminating the rules, the red tape, and the lawfare that we saw aimed at crypto by our predecessors. We're ending the weaponization of federal regulations against this community. To put it simply, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is dead, and it's not coming back under the Trump administration. And by the way, it's crazy that was ever even controversial, the idea of using the regulatory power of the government to crush an industry and to crush people who espoused a view that you didn't like. It's crazy, but let my words today serve as Operation Choke Point. Let me serve as its obituary. Now this is my vow to every single person here. You will never see this administration trying to handicap your community or diminish the impact it's had on the economy. Instead, we reject the Biden administration's legacy of death by 1,000 enforcement actions. We reject regulators. Maybe the most important thing that we did for this community, we reject regulators and we fired Gary Gensler, and we're going to fire everybody like him. And we know that people like Gary Gensler, the game that they played is that under the pretense of consumer protection, they attacked every single effort to democratize our financial markets, and that is over. America. I grew up in a working class family. I believe that America is a place where anyone should be able to make a fortune, no matter where you grew up, what degree you may or may not have. And in recent years, I'm hard-pressed to think of a better place to do so than right here in the digital assets industry. Now, our second substantive step is we're trying to create a clear, pro-growth legal framework for stablecoins in this country. And I know we've got some solid allies in Congress. Is Cynthia Loomis out there today, or did she already go home? She already, well, you know, I was supposed to have dinner last night with Cynthia Loomis. We had a little event yesterday, and I looked around, I said, where the hell is Cynthia Loomis? And somebody said, well, she's got a dinner she had to go to. And I said, I'm the vice president. Unless she's having dinner with the president, Cynthia does not have an excuse to skip this event. But we love Cynthia, and I know that she's one of the great advocates for your industry in the United States Congress. Now, I know, led by Cynthia and other great legislators, Congress is hard at work getting the Genius Act passed and across the president's desk as quickly as possible. And that's an important step. It's with good reason, because regulatory uncertainty in this country has pushed way too much stablecoin activity overseas over the last few years. Now, somebody said to me yesterday that Bitcoin has done so much over the last few years with so many headwinds. Wouldn't it be nice to have a government that provided some tailwinds to one of the fastest growing industries in our country? And that's what we aim to do. And once the Genius Act is enacted, it's poised to vastly expand the use of stablecoins as a digital payment system for millions of our fellow Americans. It'll also protect coin holders and inject further transparency into the market. And let me be emphatic on one other point. In this administration, we do not think that stablecoins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. Quite the opposite. In fact, we view them as a force multiplier of our economic might. Dollar-pegged stablecoins, particularly once Genius is enacted, is only going to help the American economy, and it's only going to help the American dollar. So, again, we're optimistic that the Senate is able to move quickly on passing a clean Genius Act, and for the House to follow up and do the same. And of course, once that happens, our great President Trump will sign it into law the minute it comes across his desk. Now, when that's happened, when the administration will then fully shift to our third priority, which is to enact a transparent and tailored regulatory framework for digital assets, one that's pro-innovation and fully incorporates crypto into the mainstream economy. And again, I've talked to so many of you over the last couple of days, and the consistent fear that I hear with all the great things that have happened over the last couple of months, the consistent fear that I hear is that there's still this perception that digital assets are not welcome in the mainstream economy. And let me promise you that our effort to change the policy is purely about changing that. We want our fellow Americans to know that crypto and digital assets, and particularly Bitcoin, are part of the mainstream economy and are here to stay. Now, we think the way to do that legislatively, because again, I hope that our party is in charge for a long time, but nothing is ever guaranteed in politics. So the best way to ensure that crypto is part of the mainstream economy is through a market structure bill that champions and doesn't restrict the extraordinary value that Bitcoin and other digital assets represent. Right now, in this Congress and with this administration, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unleash innovation and use it to improve the lives of countless American citizens. But if we fail to create regulatory clarity now, we risk chasing this $3 trillion industry offshore in search of a friendlier jurisdiction, and President Trump is going to fight to make sure that does not happen. Think about this. By locking in smart, pro-innovation rules of the road, we can also make sure that Democrats or anybody else never wage another war on the crypto community. Now, I've already hit my time here, but before I head back to Washington, let me offer you just a few bits of advice and a few thoughts on where this industry is going. This is one politician's perspective, so take it for what it's worth. Maybe a little bit less than one Bitcoin right now. But let me say a few things. First of all, I remember when I ran for Senate the first time I'd ever entered politics back in 2022. And one of the frustrations, honestly, that I had with the crypto community as a person who was one of the only people running for office who actually owned Bitcoin, and I still own a fair amount of Bitcoin today. Think about this. This is during that campaign. That's 2021 and 2022. This feels like an eternity ago, but it was only 4 years ago, is that I recognized what so many advocates of Bitcoin recognize, which is what the Biden administration was doing, what Gary Gensler was doing was a disaster, and yet there didn't seem to be any real organization pushing back against it at the political level. And let me say that part of the reason that I'm standing here, part of the reason that Bernie Moreno defeated Sherrod Brown in the Senate campaign last year is because you guys got organized and got involved in American politics, and I'm grateful to you for that. But there's a lesson to take from that experience, which is that unless you guys get involved in politics, politics is going to ignore this industry. Now, you took a big step in 2024, and I tell you, every victory that we win, it's only a provisional victory. You know, one of my great mentors in Silicon Valley always told me that, Bitcoin, that the crypto community was about exit and artificial intelligence was about voice. Well, I know that a lot of people in 2024 in this community chose voice. You chose to speak up and you chose to get involved, and I believe you changed the direct trajectory of our country because of it. But you got to keep on choosing voice. Bitcoin, of course, people call it digital gold. But while Bitcoin is digital, none of you are. None of us are. What happens in the world of politics, what happens in the world of bureaucracy, it will affect even the most transformational and valuable technologies if we don't make the right decisions. So the first piece of advice, the first thing that I'd ask you is to take the momentum of your political involvement in 2024 and carry it forward to 2026 and beyond. Don't ignore politics, because I guarantee you, my friends, politics is not going to ignore this community, not now and not in the future. The second thing that I want to toss out there is that we have to start thinking of the long-term strategic implications of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is owned by about 50 million Americans. A lot of Americans have made a lot of money, have created a lot of wealth for themselves, and that's a great thing. But I actually think that where Bitcoin is going is as a strategically important asset for the United States over the next decade. It's one of the reasons why President Trump, with the help of our great AI guy, David Sachs, it's one of the reasons why we started the Bitcoin Reserve, because we want to start to put in motion the strategic importance of Bitcoin for the United States government. We know that the PRC doesn't like Bitcoin. The People's Republic of China doesn't like Bitcoin. Well, we should be asking ourselves, why is that? Why is our biggest adversary such an opponent of Bitcoin? And if the Communist Republic of China is leaning away from Bitcoin, then maybe the United States ought to be leaning into Bitcoin, and that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. But that's not a vice president standing up here and talking out.
All right, folks, once again, you just heard some remarks from Vice President J.D. Vance speaking at a Bitcoin conference, and this is regarding the Genius Act, as we talked about the stablecoin legislation, which is making its way through Congress at this point. We wanted to turn the page and speak on an issue that hits a bit closer to home as far as geography is concerned. Let's talk about North Carolina. So we are, of course, reporting on this new suit against the State Board of Elections via the Trump administration over what it says are violations of federal law for failing to maintain accurate voter registration file. We wanted to dive a bit deeper into this issue, and joining us right now we have Matt Mercer with North Carolina GOP. Thanks so much, Matt, for taking the time to speak with us here on Live Impact News.
Actually, it's Jason Simmons, chair of the North Carolina Republican Party, borrowing Matt Mercer's laptop this morning.
Okay. So. We apologize for that. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us. So we wanted to, of course, talk about this new lawsuit that was just filed in federal court Tuesday. And so we're hearing some complaints over lack of driver's license numbers, social security numbers, and other identifying numbers in order to, I guess, connect some voter registration records. And there are some complaints about how this could be in violation of the law. Can you explain for our viewers here on Live Impact News some of the concerns here with this suit?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. This is an issue that we've raised now for some time and was at the heart of also a number of lawsuits that we brought against the State Board of Elections, where individuals that by no fault of their own registered to vote, and on that voter registration form did not collect the necessary information to be able to verify that voter as who they were, to include either the last four of their social security number or their driver's license. And so those pieces of information are critical in order to be able to verify the voter. And so as we've identified this issue and took this to the state board, they refused to provide a cure process. And so we had petitioned them to cure these individuals, and that way they would be held no harm as they would go out and vote. The Board of Elections refused. We did sue on this item, and this was also at the heart of some of the claims that Judge Griffin brought forward during his suits. And so we appreciate the DOJ continuing to bring this forward in order to bring North Carolina into compliance.
Are you able to share how many records this might apply to? Because, we just have been seeing reportings that it's some records. Is this a wide-scale issue that is being alleged here in this suit? Is this limited to certain jurisdictions? Or, I guess, are you able to speak on the numbers, if at all?
Yeah, so during a number of years, the Board of Elections did not have the proper form in order to complete the voter registration process. And again, having that piece of information missing, the last four of the individual social or the driver's license. And so during this period of time, it's estimated that there's somewhere between 300,000 to 400,000 individuals who would just need to have their their voter registration cured. It's a simple process by which they can go ahead and just update their voter registration to be able to provide that information and, again, verify who they in fact are.
Now, this topic obviously seems to go hand in hand with a big one that we've been following for months here in North Carolina, and that was the ongoing election, if you will, the race between Jefferson Griffin and Allison Riggs, and we heard Mr. Griffin's party had raised concerns about folks being able to vote who he believed were not eligible to vote or potentially might not be eligible to vote. And so I feel like this argument goes hand in hand with that. Are you able to speak at all about, that issue, how that race concluded, if you will, as we just mentioned for our viewers here on Live Impact News? We know Allison Riggs is now sworn in and now inevitably has obtained that seat.
Sure. So Judge Griffin did bring forward this issue that the DOJ has brought suit on regarding the individuals who are on the voter rolls who we are not able to verify, in fact, who they are. And so during the proceedings, you did have the North Carolina Court of Appeals rule in favor of his petition. and there was a cure process that then was to proceed. That process was never able to fully proceed because the federal courts did intervene and go ahead and have that lawsuit put on hold at that point. So, but the lawsuit that we had brought previously still is also in standing. And so, again, it's very consistent with what the DOJ has brought forward. It's in order to bring our state in compliance to make sure that the voter records are accurate and complete, and that we can verify, in fact, who the voters are by either the last four of their social or through their driver's license number. And it's a simple process to cure, which the previous state board refused. And so we always question why the Democrat board was refusing to cure these individuals to, again, be able to prove, in fact, who they were. And it's a simple process by having their voter registration updated.
I was wondering if you could speak on, some of the criticism that we hear from opponents to some of these measures, talking about, potentially disenfranchising folks unduly, putting undue hardship on folks to try to, verify all of these, different methods of identity and such. But y'all have taken a particular stance on this issue, and what is your argument and your goal in filing this suit?
Well, our petition was to, in fact, verify who the voters were. So the state constitution says that you need to be able to present a photo ID. And so the voter rolls need to be able to reflect accurately who is eligible to vote. And this is a measure by which to be able to verify the voter rolls through the last four of an individual's social or their driver's license, which is tied back to it. And so it's purely a simple process, a common sense measure to ensure the integrity of the elections.
Anything else you'd like to leave our viewers with here on Live Impact News about this overall issue? Because obviously we continue to see, this topic rising again and again in the headlines, and obviously this will be a situation that we continue to watch as well.
Well, I look forward to the DOJ suit being able to be heard and or also the new Board of Elections being able to provide a cure process. It's a simple process by which these individuals whose voter registration is incomplete, they would just need to fill out a new voter registration form and be able to provide the last four or their social security number or their driver's license number. And it's a very simple process. It's not cumbersome. And that way we can make sure to have the integrity and confidence in the voter rolls.
All right. We just want to point it out for our viewers as well here on Live Impact News. We have reached out to NC Dems for comment and also for an interview here, so hopefully we can bring that perspective for folks a bit later here on Live Impact News. Of course, we're back here at 7 o'clock. Meantime, we do appreciate, Jason, your time here on our streaming show with the North Carolina Republican Party, and do keep us abreast of this, particular case as well as any others. We thank you so much for your time, Jason.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, you too. All right, folks, here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, we'll remind you that we will obviously keep you up to date with the very latest on this suit by the Trump administration against the North Carolina State Board of Elections. We have a website, article up, so if you wanted to dive into a bit more on this, we have some reporting for you to look over on WCNC.com, also inside the WCNC Charlotte mobile app. But just a quick recap for folks who might have just been hopping on late for that interview. There are some accusations that the State Board of Elections violated federal law by failing to ensure voting registration records for some folks, and there are specifics that were pointed out about identification numbers that the suit claims the board did not collect, for example, the Social Security numbers, as we mentioned in that interview. All right, here we are coming up at the top of the hour. We'll just remind you that we've got a lot of reporting for you ahead, and so we do want to keep it here as we come on with our news at 4 in just a few moments. But in the meantime, we'll send you back to this Bitcoin conference. Vice President J.D. Vance, as we mentioned, speaking on the stablecoin legislation, which is making its way through Congress. We'll bring you back now to those remarks, which are in progress.
Economy and are here to stay. Now, we think the way to do that legislatively, because again, I hope that our party is in charge for a long time, but nothing is ever guaranteed in politics. So the best way to ensure that crypto is part of the mainstream economy is through a market structure bill that champions and doesn't restrict the extraordinary value that Bitcoin and other digital assets represent. Right now, in this Congress and with this administration, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unleash innovation and use it to improve the lives of countless American citizens. But if we fail to create regulatory clarity now, we risk chasing this $3 trillion industry offshore in search of a friendlier jurisdiction, and President Trump is going to fight to make sure that does not happen. Think about this. By locking in smart, pro-innovation rules of the road, we can also make sure that Democrats or anybody else never wage another war on the crypto community. Now, I've already hit my time here, but before I head back to Washington, let me offer you just a few bits of advice and a few thoughts on where this industry is going. This is one politician's perspective, so take it for what it's worth. Maybe a little bit less than one Bitcoin right now. But let me say a few things. First of all, I remember when I ran for Senate the first time I'd ever entered politics back in 2022. And one of the frustrations, honestly, that I had with the crypto community as a person who was one of the only people running for office who actually owned Bitcoin, and I still own a fair amount of Bitcoin today. Think about this. This is during that campaign. That's 2021 and 2022. This feels like an eternity ago, but it was only 4 years ago, is that I recognize what so many advocates of Bitcoin recognize, which is what the Biden administration was doing, what Gary Gensler was doing was a disaster, and yet there didn't seem to be any real organization pushing back against it at the political level. And let me say that part of the reason that I'm standing here, part of the reason that Bernie Moreno defeated Sherrod Brown in the Senate campaign last year is because you guys got organized and got involved in American politics, and I'm grateful to you for that. But there's a lesson to take from that experience, which is that unless you guys get involved in politics, politics is going to ignore this industry. Now, you took a big step in 2024, and I tell you, every victory that we win, it's only a provisional victory. You know, one of my great mentors in Silicon Valley always told me that, Bitcoin, that the crypto community was about exit and artificial intelligence was about voice. Well, I know that a lot of people in 2024 in this community chose voice. You chose to speak up and you chose to get involved, and I believe you changed the direct trajectory of our country because of it. But you got to keep on choosing voice. Bitcoin, of course, people call it digital gold. But while Bitcoin is digital, none of you are. None of us are. What happens in the world of politics, what happens in the world of bureaucracy, it will affect even the most transformational and valuable technologies if we don't make the right decisions. So the first piece of advice, the first thing that I'd ask you is to take the momentum of your political